humanitarian mission throughout the COVID-19. We all have masks. We've distributed them to all of our essential employees. At 8 o'clock tonight, we'll be wearing masks whenever we can keep the 6-foot distance. Throughout the district, we have masks for any of the essential employees. Again, health and safety is number one. We have several reports this evening, Dr. Bush. The first one I'd like us to do is to jump out of our agenda to move to the item that deals with you received today a building project. And we have online with us this evening Mike Rico. We have Ed Espona from Fiscal Advisors. We have Sean Faber, who is with us from BC Architectural Group, of this kind of architect. I'll let Mike start off about.
Could I ask a favor? Could people that aren't speaking mute go on mute?
Yeah, could they turn their microphone off because it's hard to hear?
Yeah.
So if you're not speaking, and that little red button that shows a microphone, hit that and it'll go red on you.
Can you guys hear? Can you hear
Thank
me
you.
all right? Mike Greco here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. At the last meeting, you approved all the contracts related to Lynch and Phase 6, except for the site contract. We're asking you tonight to approve the site contract with Reifenberg Contracting for $4 million. The site bid came in higher than we expected by roughly 1.6 million. So Dr. Cluciello, Colleen, Sean, our architect, fiscal advisors, Steve Dolan, and myself met several times to look at any items we could eliminate from the scope of work. And we came to the conclusion that all the items in the bid had serious health and safety issues that we couldn't ignore, such as the condition of the turf field, condition of the concrete bleachers, and the number of required restrooms. The good news I learned from talking with fiscal advisors was that since the voters approved our referendum, our aid ratio has risen to 96%. Our interest rates on the bonds is working in our favor. And after we award this contract, we still will have a $4 million surplus on the total referendum. So that's my report.
How much of a surplus? How much of a surplus did you say?
$4 million on the 48 million.
Okay, okay.
Why such a change in the proposed budget that was originally allotted versus what the bids came in at?
I couldn't understand what you said.
Why such a change on what was originally proposed budgetarily for this project versus what the bids came in at?
It was, I think Sean could better answer that question.
Yeah. So when Mike says that that we're 1.6 million over, that really has to do with the overall incidental costs. That's not necessarily just site work. So the way the state gives districts their building aid on a capital project, they split it into two parts. And for each building that the district owns, there's a maximum cost allowance for construction, and there's a maximum cost allowance for incidentals. And if you go above those thresholds, then there is no building aid on top of that. So it would either have to come out of the reserve or the local share. So with site work, the state does not classify site work as construction. It's classified as incidentals. So it gets grouped into all your other soft costs with your consulting fees, engineering fees, special inspection, legal admin costs, furniture. It all gets grouped together. So when we asked the board last month to defer awarding to Reifenberg, we needed to take a look at that to see how the site work stacked up with the rest of the soft costs. And that's what Mike was saying we're projecting it to be 1.6 million over that threshold. But overall, as Mike said, you're still $4 million under the original voter authorization.
So there's room, there's financial room to continue with the project then. Is that right? Do I hear you saying that right?
Yes, yeah. What we're asking the board to consider tonight is as Mike said, we looked at 3 different options on what the district could do going forward if you wanted to bring that back down to the incidental threshold. So the first option, obviously, we looked at trying to cut 1.6 million in site work out, which, as Mike pointed out, there's a lot of need on the exterior that's related to accessibility. There's a lot of need related to health and safety. And in order to do that work in the future, that aid cap does not reset for 5 years. So you would not have that aid back until 2024, which some of these items, I don't think, you could go another 4 years without addressing it. Otherwise, I think the district would be taking on some risk with some of the items that are part of the project. So the other option we looked at was rebidding the work. And we're kind of late in the game, late in the bidding season to really repackage and go back out on the streets. You run the risk of losing contractors. And then you've got the COVID-19 impact, which could escalate prices as well. And the fact is, Reithenberg was $570,000 less than the next bid. So you really got a good bid, I think, from Reithenberg with what you've got in the scope.
So we have the money to be able to go forward. I hear you saying that. Is that correct?
Yes. And the other thing that we had talked about was to try to lower that impact on the local end would be to move $1 million from your debt reserve to help offset that.
Okay, I have a question.
Go ahead.
First off, last month, didn't we get in I think there was something to the fact that we were going to not be doing certain things in order to save money up at the middle school. Can you kind of without me having the tape here, can you review that with me? What were you going to try to do to save money, and now you've decided not to do that? Were you going to? I remember you were discussing. I don't know if it was the stands or there was something you were going to do, and you decided that you wanted to do just the field itself.
I think it was the tennis courts and the basketball courts.
Okay, so you're going to save money doing that. So are you going to now do that, and with all this extra money you're asking for?
Well, we're going to, the tennis courts and the basketball courts are going to be used as staging areas for all the contractors. So they'll be out of commission for 3 summers. And that's a $354,000 part of the job. And so that'll be the last thing done in 3 summers from now. And we'll see where we are at that point. But that's a $354,000 savings we potentially could have.
Okay. So this extra $1.6 million, are you stating then that you're wanting, essentially, this is coming out of the general fund then, is what you're asking for, correct?
No. Oh.
Yes, because they're asking to take it out of reserves. Colleen, is that correct?
No, we already had the construction project we voted on a couple of years ago. There was a planned use of using the debt reserve funding. So
Yes.
This is what this is going to be used to offset this.
I don't know that I still don't understand why what we forecasted our expense would be is so far off from what our bids are coming in at, though. is there something with the contractors, or what is it that we're so far? That's not a small chunk of change.
Well, when you look,
That's Mr. Travers.
the total contract was over 20 million. So when you look at g- general contractor, HVAC, all the contracts together over and under their incidentals, it isn't that much of a percentage on the total job.
Don't we budget an overage into our forecast to begin with?
Yes, but the incidentals is capped at a certain number.
Yeah, so
And
again,
this-
we're not just looking at the site contract when we're talking about this. We're talking about the overall incidentals being 1.6 million over. So a lot of the line items that we have in the incidentals are budget items. They're not hard numbered. We also have a reserve in there or a contingency in case, any of the line items, are exceeded. So as Mike said, we've got basically three summers of construction ahead of us. So we've got the tennis court and the basketball courts is kind of a safety net that if we find out that the expenses are going to be, higher than expected, we've got that to kind of offset that at the end of the project if it's necessary.
So just for clarification purposes, this 1.6 million in overage is for the full scope of work, not just a phase.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
The incidentals covers all of Phase 5 project at Lynch. So again, the site work is just a component of it, but it's the site work that causes you to exceed the threshold because that number is locked by the state. And in addition to that, when we originally packaged the project, that maximum cost allowance was actually much higher. And every month there is there's a calculation that's done with a construction cost index. And that construction cost index was dropped, which lowered your maximum cost allowance as well.
So are we locking this pricing in for the full project at this point, or is there a risk of being dragged up again as things change and due to the nature of what's happening in the world?
Yeah, I'll let Ben answer that, but I think once you submit your SA 139s, I believe that's locked.
So if you put a purchase order out there, that's going to automatically lock in any price that, if you go and give a contract to someone. But I'm not understanding that, because I made a note that you were spending this 1.6 million for the site contract, which is essentially incidentals. So are you saying that it's not going to Reifenberg, this extra 1 point, because of that Reifenberg base bid? Do you understand what I'm asking? That 1.6, when it was first presented, I heard you guys say that it was because of the Reifenberg contract, but now I'm hearing that you're saying it's not part of the site contract?
Right. So again, the incidental is what's 1.6 million over the cost allowance. The site contract is just one component of that, but it's the one thing that we have in control right now to be awarded that is a known number.
Okay, but you're trying to tell me that the Reifenberg contract was higher than you have budgeted for, correct?
Yes, it was. Yes. Yeah. So Trophy Point that put together the estimate for us on a Buffalo, they had estimated last year that the site package was going to be 3.16 million.
Okay.
And the total base bid from Reifenberg is 3.98 million.
No, it's 3.999.
3.99, right.
I mean, I could give you $2 right now and we could just say 4 million, okay?
Yep.
So I don't understand then the incidental itself You're saying other items could have driven that up other than the Reifenberg contract? Other
Yes.
items that
Yeah.
are incidental?
Yeah,
So
so
what happened with the budgeting on the incidental side other than the Reifenberg contract?
well, if you have some line items which are percentage of construction. So if you have a higher percentage of, if you have a higher construction cost, those other costs are also increased along with that.
I don't know.
So the good news is a couple of things, as you heard Mike say in the beginning. Your aid went up 3.5%. You're going out to bid probably at one of the cheapest costs of money that you're going to find. The other part is if you delay, I call this the window of opportunity. If you delay, there's a possibility that you're going to run against COVID-19 and all of the things that that's going to bring with it with respect to costs and delays of costs increasing after construction, because a lot of folks are holding off on construction until this is over and done with. The other part is the health and safety issue. You heard that early on. We have reports where people won't come on our site to referee games anymore. They've said, we aren't going to be there because it's unsafe for us to be on your fields. And we've gotten examples of that from different referees who said, we don't go to Amsterdam, or teams that'll say, we're not going to play on your fields. So I look at this as a window of opportunity. The three things that have happened, yes, as Curtis says, the costs have gone up with respect to that particular bid. On the other hand, you didn't expect your increase in your building aid, and you didn't know that your costs were going to go down in on the interest. The other thing you've got going for you, I have heard, and it's one of the first places, that Amsterdam has always come in under budget and on time. I've asked that question several times, and the answer has always been yes to me, which I think is a good experience level with this district. They've done it on time, and they haven't exceeded costs ever in this town. To me, that's great, coupled with the idea that you've got a couple things you didn't expect going in your favor. I kept going back to Ben and saying, with the savings that we've got so far, the money we've got in the bank, that $4 million plus, we're not going to do the basketball court and the tennis courts until we look at where we are. That's 3 years down the road in terms of construction. But there's $250,000 in those two projects that could be shaved down if we needed to. So for all those reasons, I think it's an opportunity that we can't let go at this time. I know Ben wants to weigh in on any of the finances of it, because again, we went through this piece over and over and over again. We are not going to put this community at risk financially. So Ben, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, everyone. Just to kind of echo Dr. Steve's thoughts, you know, I know we're discussing one particular building tonight, and in particular, really one particular contract. But when I look at the financial picture of a capital project, I like to look at all phases in total, and with the knowing going into it that costs are going to change per building, things are going to shift throughout the project. But looking at the total financial picture of the project from January of 2016 to today, for a lot of the reasons that have already been mentioned, primarily the building aid ratio increasing 3.5%. Overall, the project is more aidable now than it was in January of 16. And then the cost of money of interest rates being less than they were at that point. For all three of those reasons, overall, even though we're going to have $1.6 million of unaidable work at Lynch, if this contract is awarded, overall, the financial picture is better than it was in January of 16. And if it was worse than that, then I would have recommended to the district that we somehow reduce site costs or incidental costs at Lynch. But since we are still well within the threshold of where we were 4 years ago, I don't see any, financial negative implications of moving ahead.
Where does the where does the plus $1 million come from? The 1.4 million. Where is that? Where is that?
Are you talking the 1.6 that's over the cost allowance?
Yes. Yeah.
So the way I look at it is that you will receive 96.5% building aid. That's your current building aid ratio on all aidable costs associated with the project. So if you spend every dollar and you are $1.6 million of unaidable work, you'll get aid on $47.3 million of project costs, which is $48.9 million, obviously less than $1.6 million unaidable. So there's an aid stream that comes in, and then there's a debt service stream that goes out. And the $1.6 million would be the difference between the aid and the debt service is essentially where your $1.6 million is. It's paid out over the life of the bond, not all up front in one cost. It's built into the overall financing plan of the project.
Okay, what is that? What's the length of that plan? What's the length of time in that plan? Anybody know?
Well, it's actually, it started in 2017, and then depending on if there's a phase 6, it's basically 15 years after you start the project. So if Lynch is approved this year and you go ahead with it, it would be basically from 2020 through 2035.
Oh my.
So,
Yeah.
Ben, the total amount that this will cost taxpayers on the 48 million with the 96.5% aid, could you just give us a rough figure on what this community will pay toward the 48 million?
It is tougher to say right now because I'm still being very conservative with a lot of my assumptions and my interest rates, just because I like to be Mr. Conservative, as Colleen knows and Ray knows as well. As an overall, I believe it to be right now in an average of around $200,000 a year over the whole duration. And again, I believe that I'm trying to be ultra conservative. I've run various scenarios that say if it's better to our favor and we do much better off on interest rates than I anticipated, there's a chance that we could be down into close to zero. But again, as of right now, I'm predicting in the couple $100,000 range, around 200,000.
That will be the cost to this district annually for the $48 million project.
Well,
correct.
For the scope of the work that's going to be done, that's not a bad projection, because I know the Lynch field is very bad shape. The citizens always complain about the seating for the games, and then the concession stand is something that if we didn't do along with the bathrooms, the state wouldn't have given us the money. So
Correct.
considering the amount of money that has gone in, maybe that's not a bad deal.
Can I get a clarification? So that 1.6 million, I don't know when that for the site work that's to be done. It sounds like you're going to be pulling that money then from our reserve accounts, which are our general fund. Is that correct right now?
I just want to make sure we're clear. The 2.5 or whatever's in our reserve is actually for the entire project. So that helps reduce the cost as far as local share. It's not specific for the 1.6 million. It helps obviously for the 1.6 million. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but still, that 1.6 that we're over on with the incidentals, that's coming out of the general fund. Is that correct right now?
Not all
No,
at once. I wouldn't
the money's already set aside in the debt service fund.
Did you hear the answer?
Yeah, I did hear that.
So it doesn't change the budget.
So when we take in consideration all of our financing, the debt service fund is built into the project.
I'm having a real tough time hearing you.
Someone's got the microphone.
There's a conversation going on somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says that the audio is very poor. Too many people have probably checked in. They don't have their microphones off.
Phone number one.
Okay. Is that better?
I think so,
That's
yeah.
better.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So the answer, Colleen could give that again. Curtis' question and her answer might be something you want to hear, John. Go ahead, Curtis.
Okay.
So just basically, I'm concerned that we have this reserve account, if it's, if we're pulling it and if it's general fund money that we're using.
No, it's in the debt service fund. The debt service fund is a separate fund from the general fund. The money has already been taken out of the general fund and set aside for the purpose of this project. So,
But that debt service could go for any other project that we have also, correct?
it was intended when the voter prop went out in 2016 to be utilized for this project to help minimize or eliminate any of the local share.
And how much do you have in the debt service fund right now?
About 2.5 million.
How much?
2.5 million.
Okay.
Okay, and then Mike Grieco told us that if we're continuing with the numbers that we're looking at now, we probably will be under budget around 4 million. Is that correct, Mike?
Yes, that's correct.
Under budget for the entire voter prop.
Correct. All right,
So
thank you.
That makes sense. Well,
We did that last year. We removed that 2.5 million out of the general fund for this debt.
Last year, what we did in the budget was move little over $800,000 that was voted on in last year's budget. That went over into the construction project.
Okay.
Understand? And then over the last couple of years, money has been put into the debt service fund. And
Right.
That's where we are now, the 2.5.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
okay, that makes it more understandable. But at the same token, the basketball court and the tennis court, that's last on the list as far as a priority and the incidental?
That's where they'll be staging all the materials, Nellie, till while the project is going on. And by the way, that will be something that we've already worked on. Mr. Nolan had expected that they would be out of use till the project got to its final phase.
All right, that's fine.
Well, I think the proposition number or if you want to do that at this point or wait, Dr. Bush, it's in your packet.
That's up to the Board of Education. I mean, we might as well take care of it now because the gentlemen are here to answer any kind of questions that we have and they've done a good job at it. So I am not opposed to voting on that now if everyone else is in agreement.
Sure.
Everybody okay?
Yep.
We can do that.
Sure.
All right. Okay. What resolution is that? Where is it?
485.
Okay. Anybody want to take a minute to look at it? Hmm. 485. Any questions, comments? Okay, Lori, call the roll.
Could I have a sponsor for resolution 485?
I will.
Who was that? Oh, Gavin. Okay. Mr. Battisti,
Yes.
Mr. Tata. Yes. Mrs. Mancini,
Yes.
Mr. Murdoch,
Yes.
Mr. Penninger,
Abstain.
Dr. Bush.
Yes. Okay. 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5, 1 abstention and 1 absent. Okay, it passed. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Ben, thanks, you, Sean.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Take care, everybody.
Yep, thanks. Have a good night.
Okay,
We
now,
have 2 other reports this evening. One is from the middle school task force, which is continuing, and I know a number of the committee members are on with us this evening. I'm going to ask Mrs. Hannon to give a brief report of update of where that is, and I want to thank the committee members for all of the work they've done.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to share my screen so you can see the presentation as we're going along. Good evening. On behalf of the Lynch Literacy Academy Task Force and our school faculty, thank you for the opportunity to present our interim report tonight. The task force grew from an initial summer committee in 2019 with the support of Dr. Colucciello. The membership includes a cross-section of Lynch Literacy Academy staff, as well as participation from our school resource officer, our PTO president and our PTO treasurer, and Nancy and Sandra from CAB have helped out as well. As a task force, our goal is to identify strategies, programs, and systems that will maintain a safe and academic environment at Lynch Literacy Academy, as measured by reducing suspension recidivism, increasing clubs, activities, and other pro-social options for students, and increasing student achievement as measured by New York State Education Department. Detailed in the mid-year progress report, we are on target with each of these goals, including implementing re-entry meetings, increasing student understanding of the code of conduct, and with your support, we appreciate this very much, adding 6 new clubs and 4 activities, and providing before and after school tutoring for our students. The findings, which are outlined more specifically in the report, include that we have met or exceeded our mid-year benchmarks that are part of our school comprehensive education plan. We have reconfigured our positive behavior intervention support, or our PBIS program. And with your support, we've increased staff in student support services. Examining our discipline data, we found that 62% of our students demonstrate every single day an understanding of the code of conduct and school-wide expectations by never receiving a referral. And utilizing the 3-tiered model of multi-tiered systems, grade 6 and grade 8 fall within a normalized range. Currently, grade 7 is an outlier, which is consistent with historical referral data. And as such, we are targeting support for grade 7 with Peaceful Schools. Next up, members of the task force will share recommendations. These recommendations were initially made by the task force and then shared back with our entire staff for feedback before being finalized into the version that you will now hear about. The recommendations are organized into 4 categories, and they are new ideas, programs and interventions, expanding current programs, continuing current programs that are showing great success, and ideas that we want to continue exploring as a task force. We understand that some of these recommendations come with a price tag, and that implementation will be made even more challenging considering our statewide fiscal environment. First up is Ms. Custard.
Can everybody hear me?
yes.
I think I turned my mic on. Okay. Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Mrs. Hannon. As Mrs. Hannon said, I will be talking about our new recommendations that we have proposed. The first recommendation we would like to implement is a middle school respite program. As you are aware, Amsterdam High School implemented a respite program this year, and they are already seeing significant success with students who have traditionally not experienced success in school for whatever reason. Our second new recommendation is to initiate a late bus. Due to lack of transportation, many of our students unfortunately are unable to participate in after-school clubs and activities. And because this is one of our goals, we feel that adding a late bus would help level the playing field and provide increased access for our students to participate in those additional clubs and pro-social activities. Third, and I think we would all agree that in order for our students to learn and be successful in school, we need them to be in school. We have a school-based attendance team, and we communicate regularly with our students and families about the importance of attendance. However, we recommend adding an attendance officer who can assist in addressing our chronic absenteeism. And lastly, and our fourth new recommendation is to implement an intensive evidence-based reading program for our middle school students who have not yet become fluent readers. And next, I believe, is Mr. Flint.
Yes, so I'm going to talk about recommendations as far as things to maybe increase or update. One concern we have is increasing staff training opportunities. Also, we wanted to either add alternative education programs, add to maybe the amount of spots that we have in the current alternative education program, or possibly pursue the idea of maybe housing our own alternative ed program and, you know, handling things right within our district. Another suggestion was to increase accelerated coursework. I know this year we added honors English to the middle school. We were talking about possibly adding maybe an advanced social studies class as well. We wanted to increase extended learning opportunities, provide office space for community school coordinator and parent liaison. And our last increase or update was to continue to increase and offer new clubs and activities based on student interest. So we already added a number of things this year that have gone over pretty well, and we would like to continue to try to involve as many students in extracurriculars as possible.
Okay, this is Chris Sherlock. I'm going to talk to you about some of the things that we are presently doing that we would like to continue doing because they are aligning with our goals to support student success at Lynch Literacy Academy. We recommend continuing with Peaceful Schools, which is an organization providing training and teacher support with restorative practices. We recommend continuing the Berkshire Farms Turnabout Program, which is an intensive and preventative case management for chronic absenteeism. We recommend continuing to provide office space and our partnership with the PINS diversion program. And we recommend continuing the work of our task force. Lastly, we recommend continuing collaboration with the special education department to match appropriate programs and resources based on individual student need.
Okay, and again, this is Matt Flint. I have the last couple of ideas that we had as far as recommendations to explore. These are things that we would like to find more out about and possibly see if that would fit within our district. One is to explore the viability of a community schools model. We also would like to explore later start time. I know that's been mentioned with some other districts, possibly in the surrounding area of starting later. And the last idea was to explore evidence-based interventions for top referrals.
So we have most of our members in attendance this evening. We want to thank you for the opportunity to share our findings, and we hope with your support we can continue working to support the success of every student at Lynch Literacy Academy. If you have any questions, please let us know. We look forward to, again, with your support.
I have a question.
Please, yes.
Nellie Bush always has a question. Okay. What did Matt mean when he talked about explore evidence-based interventions? Because a lot of what you listed before talks about intervention. So what specifically is an evidence-based intervention program?
Exactly. So the respite program is one evidence-based program that is successful at the high school. It was modeled after a program in Schenectady. And it's something that it's one idea. There are many others out there. And so the task force would like to continue looking for those evidence-based programs that are going to meet the needs of our students.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you would keep track of that, Liz.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, it looks like they've done an extensive amount of work. When you talk about after-school programs, are they of an academic nature?
That's a great question. Some are academic, some are more socially based. Brendan Setner's here tonight, and he has taken on the gaming club, which has both social applications and academic. Chris Sherlock started a Green Schools Club, also known as the Earth Club, that is really student focused. And Chris, if you want to talk about Green Schools.
Yeah, I have a very vibrant group of students who are very concerned with the environment, and they actually came to me to form this club. And we are working on improving the carbon footprint of the Lynch Middle School, Lynch Literacy Academy, excuse me. And it's unfortunate that we just got really started. I mean, we've been partnering with the Pepsi company, and we've gotten some recycling bins because we do not recycle at Lynch. I don't know if we recycle anywhere in the district. It's a concern. My kids were ramping up to address the board, actually. We may be able to still do it this way because they're very concerned about the fact that we're really not recycling in our school. So that's something that's underway, and we're going to continue that moving forward.
So do you do anything with the clubhouse down on East Main Street with the students, or is that specifically for high school?
That is specifically for high school right now.
Okay.
Mrs. Hannon, could I jump in for a moment? This is
Please,
Mrs.
yes.
Custer. Ms. Pollock, myself, and Val Thomasone, the 7th grade school social worker, have also taken over the newspaper club at school this year. So we meet with our students every other Wednesday, focusing on doing random acts of kindness and getting out the message in the community that we should always be kind to one another. And I think there was also some before school and after school tutoring and extra help, academic base for students that we had started before this happened and we had to leave school.
What is the percentage of students that participate in any of your extracurricular or after school programs? Do you have that, Liz? Do you have that number?
I can get it to you more specifically. In general, we have anywhere from 15 to 25 students in each of the clubs. Art club has a waiting list. Cooking club, we had to split into 2 sections because there were too many students that were interested. There's great interest. I can get you specific numbers.
Are you done, Nellie?
I would assume there'd be some music activities too.
What'd you say, John?
I think there's music activities that could be going on then too without having a late bus.
Absolutely, you are correct.
So I'm looking over your list here. Have you, I mean, it's a very formidable list of things you want to do. Have you looked at price tags on things? Because one of the things that I really liked was the idea of the reading program. So did the teachers look that over and see what type of a, you're saying an evidence-based reading program. So have they looked into how much something like that would cost? Because that would be, so many areas could be enhanced if you do put a program like that into place.
I completely agree. So we've looked at a couple different programs. One we've used in the past is Read 180. Another program that some teachers have training for, and I understand we actually have the materials in the district, are the Wilson reading program.
Yeah.
Both of those are evidence-based. Wilson does require pretty extensive teacher training, so that's something that I've been collaborating with Sandra on to identify exactly what that is. And thankfully, with our one upside of being designated a CSI school is that we do get additional funding. So some of these pieces in here can be covered through our CSI funds.
It's interesting you say that because we used to have Read 180, and we also used to do the Wilson reading program. So what goes around comes around. Yeah. The other.
So I think I see like 13 or 14 that I wrote down. I sort of went off the page of ideas, which is really good. Obviously, we're not going to be able to do all of them. So what's the next step? Are you thinking about ranking them? There's no point in trying to find out what it's going to towards the bottom of the list. So what's the next step?
So that's a really great question. We wanted to present this to you, get some feedback, and hear what your priorities are as a Board of Education. If you think it would be helpful, we can go through and kind of cost out very generally. It wouldn't take a significant amount of time, cost that out, so we can hear from you and obviously get your some of the ideas are very easy. For example, Mr. Flint mentioned the accelerated coursework. What we would like to propose is an accelerated humanities course. So it would be a co-taught English and social studies class started in 7th grade, where the English would support with the reading and writing skills necessary, the contents coming from social studies, where 8th graders could take the U.S. history regents in 8th grade. So that's something that we're looking at in terms of accelerated. That very minimal cost. We're looking at curriculum and adopting what the high school is using.
I think you need to prioritize your list. I think you also need to take a look at, you can have the best programs in the world, but if you don't have children coming to school, it's not going to make a hill of beans of a difference. And the other issue is taking a look at your at-risk students and figuring out, like Jill said a couple of things, and taking a look at what would be the biggest impact or the biggest bang for the buck. Because if they're not engaged in their school, you can stand on your head and nothing's going to happen. So I think you need to prioritize everything that you put down on this list, because everything's not going to happen. So
absolutely,
the children best. Your teachers know what's best for kids. So that's probably the next step at this point, and especially because of the ranking of your school. So you do get extra finances to help facilitate student achievement. So let's see what you can come up with.
Excellent. We appreciate the support. We will prioritize and we'll report back to you. Again, we really appreciate the support and moving forward. This has been a very valuable experience for us. And hopefully we'll...
I have one other question also. One of the items, well, first off, the training of the teachers, that really kind of bothers me, because, we sit in the meeting with Sandra and we're hearing a different story, because each board member, that's like on the top priority for us is our, we had a huge turnover of teachers in the last couple of years in our district. And so training is like, it's on everyone's plate to be looked at. So that really concerns me. But another thing, why can't we find office space for Nancy Rad? You don't have any more offices available there? Because that's one of the items that you could click off tonight if you say, yeah, we could put her over here, and don't give her a broom closet, but how come we're having a problem finding an office for her?
So that's a great question. Lynch Literacy Academy is definitely maxed out for space. I actually spoke to Nancy earlier this week and invited her over to explore some different spaces in the building. It's something we've already talked about. So you're right. There are some things on this list that are easy. We can check right off with no issue. We would love to have Nancy in our building, at least for a few days a week.
Okay, that'll be good. Nellie, a school attendance officer, we had that position many years ago, probably before your time even,
No.
but we did have that position. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
Why did we drop that? Why? Because that was like number 3 on their list that they'd like to do, you know, right behind the late bus.
Well, that was then, this is now, so we have to deal with the now, and can't worry about what happened in the past. So we need to go forward from here.
But I'm saying, was it not effective having a attendance officer? Was it found to be not?
Well, there were in my period of time, there were 3 that I remember. Mr. Labatt, another gentleman,
Setner.
no, Mr. Setner,
In Greco.
and Mr.
Pete Greco.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the 3. Mhm.
So do we, that could be a position that would be a part-time position, right? We don't have to have a full-time?
I don't know. I mean, the attendance that the staff and the teachers and the administrators are dealing with is not a part-time. It's not a part-time position. Depends on how they have to go to court and what are the legal issues and what has happened now that was different from before. So, I mean, I guess it's just another area to kind of investigate. Any other questions from the board?
Dr. Bush, this is Matt Flynn again. Can I just clear up one thing for Mr. Penninger said that list isn't necessarily the rank order that we wanted things. We were kind of just going with maybe things that we had already or things. So he mentioned like that one was number 3. That didn't necessarily mean that was our 3rd priority. You know, we can go back and rank them. I'm sure Ms. Hannon would, you know, kind of touched on that too.
That's why I asked you to prioritize the list.
Yeah,
because you do have a lot there.
And all the things I talked about are things that we're already doing.
Yeah.
That we just want to continue.
Okay.
I will say, I know
Thank
there
you.
are people in the call who aren't familiar with the respite program. I saw the respite program. A few of us have gone and seen the respite program or a few different programs. We particularly like the one at Schenectady, and it was started at the high school. It is running, Nancy can speak to it certainly more, but it runs with high levels of success. It's a middle school model that I think would be certainly highly beneficial there. It's very powerful program. Those students who go through the program feel great connections to school, and not only school, but the teacher and the social worker committed to that program.
I guess I would also be curious how the law enforcement agencies cooperate and coordinate with the schools in regard to students who need the respite program. So I think all of those are important components of helping a child be successful.
The program at the high school, it's called PREP, which is a personalized restorative education program, and it was modeled after Schenectady, but adapted to fit our population of students. And it's just been remarkable. And it also depends on who you have running the program. And we have 2 of the best in there helping these students. So I think it would be great for middle school.
I think, you know what, Nancy, I keep asking this question all the time. It's wonderful to have all of these programs, but as a member of the Board of Education, I would like to know what do we get? I mean, how are the children successful? Give us some information that validates how good these programs are for our kids. So we can hear about all these programs, but we really don't know the impact or the effect they're having on our students. I think as a board member personally, I would like to know that, because not one of us who sit on this board, we want what's best for the kids. And if they need help in a respite program or whatever, please come back and tell us how are you doing? What impact have you made on the lives of these children? I think, to me, that's very important. I want to know that. So if you want to put that in your list of things to do.
Well, I will actually I'll touch briefly that the students that have participated this year in the past had been at 80K, and out of the 30 that they've been working with, only two of them ended up having to return to 80K. The rest of them have been able to stay in the regular school. They found success. They've been connecting with teachers better. And I have one young man who had been suspended quite a bit last year who now is getting straight A's in math. And he is looking to become an accountant. So like that, these are just little snippets of things, but it really has made a difference.
That's a success story. And obviously he has found a positive relationship with whoever the adult was that helped him through the process.
And those the social worker and the teacher have been talking with those children, if not every day, every other day, the children that are in the program now through this COVID-19 shutdown. So anyway. I'm proud of it.
It really would be beneficial, not only to have them present, but to really see their classroom and understand the environment that they create for those students. It certainly goes above and beyond just a traditional classroom environment, and that helps that connection. And I think that's so important at the middle school level as well.
And that's what you call restorative practices?
Well, we call it the PrEP, Personalized Restorative Education Program. So each child has their own individual IEP, if you want to say it, but it's not a special ed program.
Okay, that's good. That's fair. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you to the middle school principal Liz and all the staff members who helped put this together. Certainly we want success stories with our students. There's no question about that. So thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments? Okay, I guess we're ready.
Two follow-ups. Nancy Polikowski is going to be working with the task force. They have about $100,000, as you mentioned, Dr. Bush, in specialized funds to improve that school. They'll probably have $100,000 each year for the next 2 years. So she'll be working with that task force to determine what they want to do with that grant. Also, Colleen reminds me that the renovation project at Lynch has office space designed for it, so that'll be coming along as they do that project. And putting that probation officer over there really made a big difference for us. So offices like that are really going to make a difference too. So to your point, there are funds for it, and there'll be some rooms. As an aside, Mrs. Hannon sent out a survey to parents about teleteaching. We sent it to you. We're not going over it, but there's some real interesting information that parents and students gave, and we'll be sending that to the board members. If you haven't already gotten it, it's our first look at teleteaching in Amsterdam with parents and students responding. And we're looking at doing that in the other schools as well. But I want to thank Mrs. Hannon for her leadership in getting that survey out. It's really, really interesting. And I think using it in other schools will be helpful. The digital divide is phenomenal. It's really, really big with respect to the students who are using it and are involved in it. And that's nationwide as well. We're finding out that there's a big divide, and it has to deal with poverty and who's got what resources, and finding more and more. Her survey has a lot to tell us, and thank you for doing that, Liz. Our next report,
well, I think
is redistricting.
With this, yep, okay.
So I'll turn it over to Dr. Downing and Mr. McCleary, who I think have been with us the whole time.
Hi, everyone. Yes, we've been here. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, great. So I am just going to share my screen. So thank you for finding the time to meet with us here this evening. We are pretty excited about we are very excited about what it is we're going to be talking to you about here this evening. So I'm hoping that right now you can actually see my screen, and I hit the wrong button. There we go. And you should be able to see GASD redistricting study recommendations. So Eric is here as well. And tonight we're just going to talk to you about to follow up with you on our meeting that we had back in November. So if you remember back in November, we had come to you to talk about a preliminary study dealing with the transportation issues that we were having in Amsterdam. So we know the issues that were there, students that were, on the buses for a long time, students that were waiting for buses and so on and so forth. So, with the board's good graces and approval, we continued on and we formed a redistricting advisory committee, and the committee met approximately 6 times between January and March to formulate a plan. So the committee, which wound up having about 20 members, we had a number of parents, teachers, administrators. There were 3 board members on the committee, district office administrators, as well as building level administrators, but a large number of parents that came, and we worked together to try to come up with a plan that that would be able to work for Amsterdam. And, it was a positive experience. Everyone recognizes how difficult the decision is to make, to make a move as far as, going from, say, school choice to homeschool zones. And what we wanted to do was to come up with a plan that was going to be something that everyone could pretty much live with. So tonight, we're going to talk to you a bit about some of the things that we've come up with. So to begin with here, we had shared with you previously that we could anticipate the number of bus routes being reduced significantly with a return to these elementary schools. We anticipate the bus routes being reduced between 65 and 75%. That number was a preliminary number back in November, and that number is still holding pretty steadfast as of today. So when we met as a committee, what we pretty much decided, what we had come up with were recommendations. And so one of the pieces that we had talked about was, well, what is this transition plan actually going to be looking like? So you can see on your screen here now that we have a few key pieces that will drive this transition. First of all, we would want to see separated siblings being relocated to homeschool zones. Current K-5 students will be given the option of remaining in the current school or relocating to homeschool zones. So the current students will be able to have that option. For 2021, so for next school year, incoming K students will be given that option of attending the school with siblings or attending a school in the home zone. And then beginning next year as well, we're looking to be able to support students with special needs in their homeschool zones. So we had talked at great length about each of these items. We had talked a lot about wanting to make sure that this transition was going to be as smooth as possible, especially for the students that are currently, wrapped up in their own communities right now, in their own schools, right? So that's the biggest concern. We want to make sure that if we make this change, it's going to be done right. It's going to be done thoughtfully, and it's going to be done with full knowledge, with full transparency, and given parents the option to be able to make a decision. So basically what we're looking at would be for the next 3 years, parents would actually have the option of continuing to keep their children in the current schools that they're in. So for next year, 2021, 21 to 22, and then 22, 23, the students would still be able to stay in their current schools. Beginning in 23, 24, those students may continue in the building of choice as long as there's room in the designated grade, and transportation would be provided by the parent. So basically, we are looking at providing a 3-year transition piece with this. Okay, so that's one of the pieces that that the committee decided they could live with. and be able to give people time to make the necessary plans. There were a couple of other things that we had talked about as well that seemed to be very important with this too. People were pretty excited about the fact that, you know, now children would be going to school with the kids that are in their neighborhoods. All right, because right now with the magnet school piece, that may not necessarily be the case. So that was one perk. Something else that we had talked about, though, was that if a child is going to be returning to or going to a homeschool zone, we would be looking at potentially a need for some earlier care for children during the course of the school day. In other words, opening up the school a little bit earlier. So, for example, I can tell you, I know of many families who may be putting their children on the bus from home at 7:30 in the morning, and then the parents are heading off to work. Now, if they decide to move their child into their home school zone, that could potentially be within a 1-mile radius of school, meaning that they may not have transportation. They may be running into some struggles with childcare for that time, that time where they may need to go to work. So one of the recommendations, as you can see in the third bullet on your screen, would be board consideration for, excuse me, that's not the third one there. It's actually on the next screen. I was getting ahead of myself. We were talking about so what I was talking about, let me just get there first, sorry. This is what happened. Before school care in elementary schools. So potentially looking at prior to the start of school from 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning, having a teacher aide and some support there. We do have a slide to show you as far as the budgetary pieces are concerned, with the projections of cost savings. By reducing the number of buses, we're hoping to be able to use some of that savings to be able to support some of the ideas. And this is one of them that we feel would be pretty important. Now, before I go any further with some of the recommendations and the budgetary pieces, I think it might be very helpful for you to take a look at what we're talking about with the zones. So let me see here. I think this is the picture. And Eric, you know, at any given point, please feel free to chime in. On your screen now, what you're looking at is the redistricting map. And so the colors are it's evident. You can read it over on the left-hand side of your screen. Yellow is Barkley, the green would be Curie, Teckler is the red, and McNulty is really right in the center of the city. So you can see the density of the population of our students would be pretty much right in the center of town. As we had talked about before, when we were looking at the lines, Eric did a fabulous job of going through and just trying to find major routes to be able to help with some of the divisions, because we do not want to see, you know, kids crossing major roadways. Starting in the center of the city in the blue area there with McNulty, McNulty students for the most part would be all walkers. They are all within pretty much that 1 mile, 1 to 1.5 miles radius. You will see on the south side with Barkley, Barkley's population, the south side population would not be enough to fill Barkley Elementary School. So the students on the north side of the river, just over the river, actually it's like kind of the northeast side coming over the bridge, you will see some of those students then will be coming on over to Barkley. It made sense to grab those students because they would have had to be bused to a school wherever they went to. So that would be the Barkley piece. Teckler is picking up all of the outskirts of town, going starting from McNulty's end boundaries, where there's about 500 kids in that blue area, and circling around the city, you know, from the west to the east. And then of course Curie has the east side of the city all the way out. So the map, Eric found, this is a map that's going to be shared with parents because it can be zoomed into, it can be, parents are able to find their streets to be able to determine, you know, where what school their student might be designated as a homeschool zone. And it's very telling. The map is very telling in the way the population is laid out here in Amsterdam. Eric, did you want to add anything yet? Eric? No? Yay?
No,
I was
Eric?
muted. I was talking and muted. No, you pretty much summed it up, and I just want to point out, like you just did, the blue area for McNulty, actually within walking distance, there's over, I think it's like 650 children that can actually walk to that school. So that basically filled up rather quickly when we were making the boundaries, and all the boundaries are based on safety, not walking down or crossing a major highway, trying to keep them on sidewalks if I can, that type of situational thing. But considering, so McNulty was like the baseline for this whole map because of the amount of students that were around in that area. After that, of course, South Side, Barclay, it didn't fill up the whole entire school with all the South Side, so that's where we took the East End, which filled it up to the correct amount. From there, we went to Curie, and Curie got basically all south of 67 into the east of the city. And if you'll notice, right up going up 30, they also got the ones that are on the other side of 30, so students don't have to cross the road there. And then, of course, Techler would get the outskirts, everything else to the north and above 67 and to the north. This map itself, I've been working on a little more. You can see that's actually the shape of our district. It's really complicated based on farmland and different things. I'm working basically 2 screens and drawing it. So to the upper, out to the west, that triangle shaped area is not finished yet, but it'll be a little more detailed. But that's basically how the district is actually shaped. It's not shaped by county lines or anything. That's pretty much it for that.
So when the committee got together, we really pretty much had conversations about what are we going to do with this transition piece. We have, students that are currently in 4th grade, for example, who, with the transition, let's say if we were to decide to just make the change as of next year, they would be very upset by that, right? So students who've already established friendships, have already established relationships with their teachers in their buildings. So we spent a lot of time talking about how can we do this with the least impact on students and families. So that is where the 3-year piece came up, because we're looking at current 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders as being able to stay in their current buildings, still with that transportation, so that they can then transition naturally into the middle school from there. Of course, there are exceptions, and everyone agreed when we take a look at the plan. It's understood that there are going to be some exceptions to the rules, that there are going to be some students that that the superintendent can make that determination, and that's what happens. I mean, those things happen now already. So there are some of those pieces there as well. The committee was thoughtful. I will tell you that there are parents on the committee that are looking at having to change with some of their students, and provided fabulous feedback as far as what the concerns were, and also offering recommendations as to, if this is what we're going to do, how can we best ease into it. As it is right now, any incoming students, any new students coming into the district are going into this homeschool zone. They are being assigned to schools within, based on where they live. We had conversations also about, let's put it this way, we know that our population can be transient within the city, right? So we can have children that might move from one apartment to the next within the city. So what's going to happen to them as far as moving schools? We do not want to see them moving from one school to the next. throughout the year. So we have provided some stipulations for that as well. So once a student enters a particular school based on their address, you know, that's where they will stay for the rest of that school year. So as not to disrupt their learning and have them move into another school, you know, and have to just uproot them and to go through those changes in those pieces. So we had, as I had started to say, we had offered up the before school recommendation. We had also talked about, and this is still something that would be pretty cool if it could happen, but this is something that may need to be put on the back burner for a little bit, considering everything that, you know, everything else that's going on right now. But it's a neat idea for, to consider in zone AM shuttles for student pickup. So we know that attendance is an issue, right, in most of the schools across the country, but in Amsterdam as well. So one of the thoughts was, could we potentially kind of run a bus loop within within the zones for each school? So the bus, you know, would just have a potential few bus stops along the route and pick up kids as they're actually walking to school. There are districts that are doing that now. So you know, we had recommended that perhaps we can consider this service for December through March. When the weather's bad, when the weather starts getting a little funky and cold, to be able to support those kids that would be walkers. And could that potentially help with the attendance issues that we're all facing? And so I mentioned the before school recommendation. And the other piece that came out of the committee was after school care. So considering for next year, it's looking as if McNulty and Curie may be having an after school program. The thought was, is there potential for something like that at Barclay or Techler to be able to offer an after school program and potentially even consider a sliding scale fee for that particular program? So you will see that we did actually have a budget summary for these pieces, and I think I've shared this with you in other documents you know, that you've received. But this would be the outline of some of the extra pieces that we would like to be able to see happen and go along with this moving forward. So when we talk about the next steps, we are ready to go to be able to share information electronically, via paper, you know, a mass media blitz, to be able to get information out there. And what we would want to be able to do is reach out to families to see who would be interested in having their children move into their home school. So we want to be able to get that going ASAP. Remember, it's voluntary here for the next couple of years. So we'd want to be able to get it out there so that we can start making some other decisions, right? So there's other contractual obligations that might be tied to this, and planning, of course, going into next year as far as teacher assignments and things like that. So the registration for 2020 to 21 needs to get started. It's been on hold. We want to be able to share, you know, what the district would be doing with this. We would be able to put pictures of the maps up there. Originally, you know, before this whole COVID thing, we were planning on going into schools and you know, kind of having town hall meetings in each of the different schools. Now what we'll have to do is set something up electronically to be able to get this information out there and get things moving. But basically we would want to be able to hear from the families to let us know what they're thinking with their children. And then in May, we would be able to take a deeper look at, you know, the transportation handbook, and then the child safety zone study and recommendations, which need to be updated. They haven't been looked at. I don't believe in a little while, and then potentially have to look at the change of policy for the board policy as far as some of the transportation guidelines. I think the policy might need to reflect the fact that we're going to be referring to the home schools as the assigned schools. That's some of the language that's in the policy that we're going to need to probably clean up. So that's what we have for you. I will say that you know, it was a challenge. It was a challenge because this is not an easy topic. It's not an easy conversation. Remember what started all of this, right? The transportation situation is not good. So that's what prompted this in the first place. So when we're trying to fix one major problem, then in searching for a remedy, other problems can start to come about. The committee sat down, we hashed things out. We had, you know, very transparent conversations and said, well, this is what we think we need in order to be able to move this forward. And so we are coming to you tonight with these results and, you know, to ask for your support in going forward, so that we can get this going, and let's see you know, where our kids are going to be going for next year. Remember that the lottery is no longer, so incoming K students will be assigned based on their home school zone, and again, any new students coming in are being assigned based on those pieces already. So with that, are there any questions, comments? I'm going to stop sharing so I can see you.
I have questions, but I'm going to let the rest of the board members go first.
I
don't
can't hear you, Deanna.
You're muted.
I'm back now.
Yes, we can hear you.
No, I just wanted to take a moment and really thank Eric and Michelle. I know that they put a lot of legwork into all that they did. Having taken part in these meetings, you could tell that they really put a lot of data into different scenarios and the overall analysis of everything, but also the consideration given to all of the different parents and situations. And there are so many different components that go into this whole thing that many of us, I think, never even thought about. One thing I did want to point out, I think we had discussed it, correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea that budgetarily on those transportation for the shuttles, we had proposed the idea of the possibility of also just using them at certain schools versus utilizing them at all of the schools. So that could also be another way to transition in from that perspective as well, while not needing as much of an expense. And really kind of tackling the McNulty scenario where there is a large concentration of students that will be walking from that area. But that's really my input. I thank you guys for everything.
Thank you, Deanna, and you're absolutely right. We had talked about those shuttles primarily for McNulty and potentially not having the need for them out at Techler or Barkley for that matter. So yes, thank you for clarifying that. And thank you for your help on the committee as well, because your input was truly appreciated and valued and listened to.
Thank you.
Michelle, I'd like to ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of extenuating circumstances or families who have hardships, what's the procedure going to be? Is that going to be strictly for the superintendent to take care of?
So, Jo Marie, if you remember, we had talked a little bit about getting a committee to perhaps consider that. But
yes,
remember, and so there's still potential for that. But after we had talked a little bit more about this, we had thought, let's put it in the superintendent's hands, because technically that's where many of those things are now anyhow. You know, when these things come up, the superintendent can make that particular decision. And as you know, we had a couple of, you know, circumstances that came up to us that were just truly heartbreaking, heart-wrenching.
Yes.
And so, you know, no one would argue with the fact that those children just need to stay where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So rather than worrying about getting a committee together and making it another more cumbersome than it needs to be. Let's just quickly take it, give it to the superintendent to handle, and then move on.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if I might ask a question, if you can hear me. I'm not sure if I'm connected
Hey,
well.
Reverend.
Yes, hello, Reverend.
All right. It's good to be joining the meeting. We had another meeting going on. And this, Michelle, might be, Dr. Downing, might be what you were just referring to a moment ago. But I had conversations with the Jackson's children and deep concern about separating them. Would they also fall into that same scenario that you articulated to Mrs. Tata?
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
Well, let me just weigh in and say I see Ms. DiCaprio went and made a comment about the projected savings of $100,000. And so that was nice to see. And I'm thinking, on that after school portion, if it is a school in need, with them receiving, I think we've got a couple of schools that are getting over $100,000. Oh, that's the middle school. So I don't know how much money these schools in need get additionally, but there's no reason why that teacher and that aide couldn't come under that, and that after school program could include like a homework club or something where these students really could do extra reading and help the kids out with their math and so forth. I think I see nothing but positive potential with that. I don't know why it's one teacher and one aide for 2 hours. But do we need to have both of them there? Is that because we're anticipating a huge amount of children and students, or what? Why is that, Michelle?
Yeah, so we were thinking that there may very well be anywhere between 25 and 30 students. So so to be able to support them with their homework and so on, we may need a couple of bodies there to be able to do that.
Okay, and like a school in need, like for example, Barclay. Why couldn't we underwrite some of this cost for that after school program off on the money that they're receiving through the school improvement program?
I can't speak to where that money is going at this current time. I'm not really sure, what it's been budgeted for, but this is definitely something that could be covered with those dollars.
Yeah, so
Okay.
to answer his questions, yes, we could allocate some money for an after school or before school program as long as it's based on instruction. I could allocate some of that SIG money towards that. Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. That's all I really wanted to hear, Sandra. Okay.
Yeah. That was
And then it will be in the policy that Dr. Colucciello or whoever the superintendent is will have essentially the final say on all placement, correct?
Exactly.
Okay, and I agree with Deanna. I love going to your meetings. You did a great job on keeping us on time and on task. It was refreshing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
John, do you have any comments?
No, I'm just listening.
Okay. All right. I have a couple of questions if everyone else has spoken. Okay. First of all, the whole idea of, well, first of all, thank you, Eric and Michelle, for the hard work that you've done, meeting with the committee and looking at everything. But the whole idea of the redistricting was because of the outrageous cost of transporting children all over the city. Is that correct?
In addition to, well, I think even along with the cost, we are talking about the amount of time children may have been on the bus, the
That's right.
inconsistencies, right, in the travel, all of that kind of thing. Yeah.
That's right.
Mhm.
Now, I heard you say something about 650 students at McNulty. I really hope you're not putting 650 students in McNulty School.
No. Every school. I think Eric was talking when he mentioned the number 650. He was talking about in that particular school zone. Of those 650 students, only 500 at most, I believe, right, Eric? We can show that map up there, is what would be assigned to McNulty. We are not looking at numbers any larger than where the classes are now. So the populations in every one of the school buildings will resemble what they're looking like today.
Okay, so because that will cause some students to go to a different school. All right, I'm glad to hear everyone make the comment about the superintendent having the last say when it comes to extraordinary circumstances as it relates to children. So I'm happy about that. I don't think that that's something that has to be put in the redistricting plan. I think that that's just a common understanding that the superintendent would have the last say. My other concern, though, is that of the elementary schools, McNulty School is considered a comprehensive support improvement school. In talking to Eric, I saw that the percentage of students on the low socioeconomic range of that school was going to increase. I have a concern about that because for number one, it's difficult when you have all the subgroups in a school that can't make it out of the designation. So I have a concern. I'm just going to put that on the table. I have a concern about that because based on where these children are coming in the boundary of McNulty, the percentage of low socioeconomic students is increasing based on the boundaries.
So would you like, I'm sorry, Dr. Bush, did you want us to show you the data on that? I think we have that here.
I'm just pointing out the concerns that I had based on the information that I had. The other kind of comments that I'm going to make is I'm happy that this is going to be happening over a 3-year period of time. Did I hear you say that children who are registering this year for the next school year, if they're an only child, they're going to their home school, their neighborhood school?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So little by little, they'll get to where they need to go.
Right.
A couple of the schools, I think McNulty is one of them, and I believe there's another school that Nancy Rad received a lot of money for them to have I think it's an after-school program, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
I have a little concern, especially as we start talking about the budget. The whole idea was to not only get children off the bus for extended periods of time, but also to save money in the transportation costs. I think it's wonderful to be able to offer a before-school program and after-school program for children. But historically in the past, that's either been done through the YMCA, which we don't have anymore, or some type of a grant. And it might be nice to say that a teacher aide is only going to cost $4,800, but when you add in all the fringe benefits, it's more than that. So I'm a little concerned about offering before school care and after school care. That's just my opinion. I'm just saying what I want to say. Let's see. That's something that would be nice to offer after parents, but I think that we have to take that into serious consideration when we take a look at that. Because when I added up your figures for before school program and after school program, based on your projected cost, it would be $75,400. And I just don't know what the savings in transportation would be compared to the services that we'd be offered in that respect. So those are my comments. I again appreciate everything that you and Eric and the committee did, but those are my comments. So, I always have to comment on something. That's my opinion. Okay, thank you.
Now,
That's all I have to say.
Can you elaborate? Didn't we go over how the demographics would line, and wasn't it almost identical for McNulty?
Yes, as a matter of fact, Eric, do you want to pull that up and share your screen? Do you have it handy there?
Yeah, here it is.
Okay.
Now, is it showing? I don't see
Yeah.
it.
Yep. It's there. It's hard to see, but it's there.
I just want to say that these are the newest numbers throughout the thing. And basically, Curie and McNulty really didn't change that much. If anything, actually, with the newest numbers, McNulty went down 2%, 1.4% actually. Barclay and Tech are the ones that are going to kind of flip-flop just due to the demographics. But otherwise, they're all pretty much still the same all the way through.
Yeah.
Oh, because when you showed me the map, there was an increase in
The original one was this screen, which the original screen reduced. We had different numbers. I can't remember, Michelle, why I had to take something out of this one or add. Remember, we had to go lower.
I think that you were including students that may not have like St. Mary's kids, I think, and
so
right,
yeah, exact for that part. So, but still, even in the one I showed you now, this is the same thing. This one 3% only, and Curry went up 3%, and then again, these guys flip flop. Barkley went up, and Techler flip flopped across the board.
Yeah.
You know, and overall, of course, we have the same numbers for the whole district.
So basically, McNulty and Curie really are not seeing much of a change, because when we're looking at 1 or 2%, that can change. That can vary from one year to the next. We're looking at a bit of a shift between Barkley and Techler.
Okay.
And,
All right. The other question that I had was, don't all of our schools offer the children English as a second language services? Because you said something about making sure that each of the children in different schools would have access to that. And I didn't understand that, because I thought our children I'm trying to find it.
Yeah. That's a good question.
Here it is. It says, beginning of 2021, students receiving consultant teacher and or English language learner support can opt to return to their home school zones, where they will receive don't they all receive those services no matter what school they go to?
So what happens is, actually, so they are receiving those services, but they may not they are receiving those services, but you will see, for example, consultant teaching services, for example, currently, if you are a 5th grader in the district that needs that special education support, then you are attending Techler, because Techler is the school right now that is currently offering consultant teaching support.
So no other school?
Every year, right, no other school. So typically, as every year, kindergarten starts, with K registration, a particular school is assigned who will be having the CT classes for that particular grade level. So when new students are coming in, if they need CT support, they are going to be going into that school. So what's nice about this now, so imagine that, I think Techler right now, Christine could verify, the caseload of CT students there is, I know, in the teens. So what we would see, instead of having to support all of the CT students in one particular building, now we could see them nicely spread out, in their homeschool zone. So you would be looking at much smaller numbers to be able to support.
Christine, isn't there a consultant teacher model in each one of the elementary schools?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Isn't there a consultant teacher model in each of the elementary schools?
So, as Michelle said, consultant teacher exists at every elementary building, but not at every grade level in every building. So, for example, if a 2nd grader enters our district and is a consultant teacher, needs consultant teacher services, we would have to look and see which building grade 2 consultant teacher is offered at. Likewise, if mid-year we end up classifying the student and we don't offer that in the current building, we need to send them to a different school.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Why wouldn't there be a special ed teacher in each building servicing students that need consultant teacher model? Instead of moving the kid, don't we have a program in each school as with a consultant teacher? That's another topic. Forget it. I'm just curious.
Well, and I don't disagree with you, and I think, you know, certainly that's what we would be moving to.
Okay. I don't have any more questions.
So I take it we can move on with this and tell a committee, move on and go to the next step.
Yep.
Yep.
Ray?
Yes.
With respect to the board, if they're finished, I just want to make a comment. From communication standpoint, you know, we've been tied up with the COVID situation. It seems like it's consuming us. But I know that going forward, the committee did a great job. I know I've only been here since January, but I see all the work that's been done, and Dr. Cluccio and I have worked, discussed before everything happened, just some communications, things we're going to do going forward. It's going to be a big project in that respect. To just get parents on board, understand what's happening. So I just want to say we're going to be working on that together. Aside from the technical aspects of the study and so forth. So there's going to be a lot of questions, and we're going to need a lot of answers. So we're going to work on that as well. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question slightly related, but not? Have we determined what our plans are for next year with pre-K transportation?
Pre-K transportation.
So actually, I'm going to be talking about it again tonight. So that would be up to the Board of Education on what they decide. So we're going to need approval from the board as to whether we should cancel transportation for pre-K or whether we should move forward with it. So that's something that I'm hoping that we can decide tonight.
Okay, sorry for jumping the gun on that then.
Yeah.
Good question.
Budget. Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Michelle. Thank you. Committee members, I know some of your committee members are out there. Thank you. The next part is Colleen DiCaprio, who's working day and night, and that's true. If you go by here on a Sunday, you'll probably see her here. I think she's taking up this place as a religion. But she has, we've been involved in webinars with the business managers throughout the state. She keeps close contact, and this is a moving target, but you'll hear about where we are today. She's done a great job with this budget. You'll also hear about when she's proposing the board vote. We don't know about when the community will vote. That jury is still out, but she's proposing a date for this board. But I think she's proposing the best we could do with at this point in time. So with that, I'll turn it over to Colleen.
Yeah, so I think each of you should have the actual budget presentation. If you can take that out, because I'm not sure if I put it on. Hold on.
It says slideshow.
Oh, yeah. So start from the beginning here.
Yeah, you're good.
Then from the beginning.
Everybody see that on their screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So as Dr. Clucciello said, this budget obviously has been a difficult one this year, based on everything changing every day from one day to the next, never knowing really what's going on. So what I'm preparing or presenting tonight is really what we know of or do not know of actually at this point. So we're using our best hypothesis on a lot of these areas. So when we look at the first screen, on the first slide.
I'm sorry, Colleen, I'm not seeing whatever it is you're referencing.
So
you know, the other ones it appeared on my screen as like the main presentation. Is anybody else seeing it, or?
I'm seeing what she's presenting.
Okay, maybe it's user error then. I will figure this out. Thank you.
Hey, we're all learning, Deanna. All right, so on the first screen, what we're talking about is, with the COVID-19 pandemic that came out, it caused a lot of uproar with New York State and obviously with the school district. So New York State had to take a step back and look and see where they're sitting with their funds. So what they did in the light of all those situations is they are talking about, because of the deficit, of having potential mid-year cuts and what they refer to as pandemic adjustments. So for our first budget the enacted budget that was presented by the governor on April 2nd, he gave us a budget really that was flat in aid, in the foundation aid essentially. So what he did was he was going to take away $1.1 billion from all the districts, and essentially he backfilled it. I like to refer to it as a backfill. He supplemented it and gave it back to the districts with the federal CARES restoration money that was received from the federal government. So if you were all here a couple of years ago, this is similar and reminiscent of the gap elimination adjustment that happened a couple of years ago. So we're kind of in the same situation. The caveat I'd like to say is that the stimulus funds that are offered for relief this year, it still remains to be seen if that's going to actually happen. And because the economy right now is obviously at a standstill. People are not making money, so no revenues coming into the state, but essentially that revenue is needed to fund all the services that the state needs to supply. As I mentioned, on the April 2nd, the New York State adopted their state budget. The foundation aid was kept flat for 2020-21, which was essentially 0% increase for all districts. However, the overall aid increase for everybody was less than 1% at 0.35. And the only reason that 0.35 was even given was because of the expense-based aid. So the fortunate situation for most school districts, and especially for Amsterdam, is that they stayed true to supplying and reimbursing us for those expense-based aids, which is really about 95 million on the formula-based state aids. And as you know, those expense-based aids are our transportation, our special ed, BOE services, and a couple other areas. So really, when you look overall at the state aid, for overall for everybody, you take the total state aid, you have your full expense-based aid, and as I mentioned with the backfill, you take out the 1.1 billion cuts that the governor took out, and then fill it back in with the federal stimulus funds, and that made it neutral. So as we look at it, and I like to bring the question in there, is what is the latest as we know it, or what can we expect? Really, we really don't have a firm knowledge of the areas. And as I mentioned, the one good news that if we can look at everything is that our expense-based aid and building aid structures as far as funding still remain the same, and he is currently funding those fully. He had originally mentioned, I think we had discussed it at our last board meeting, that the governor had potentially, he was trying to eliminate in his earlier proposal to the state to consolidate all the expense-based aids within the foundation aid, so artificially inflating the foundation aid amounts that are going to the district. Thankfully, that was not voted on and rejected in the enacted budget. Now, going forward, what's going to happen, because of the state's dire straits and no funding and deficit, they're going to be looking at what we refer to as periodic adjustments to the state spending. So the enacted budget authorizes the New York State Division of Budget to adjust state spending, which includes obviously our state aid. And those periodic adjustments to the state spending includes what I refer to as 3 look-back periods. So our first critical period obviously is coming up in April. This is this first month. So what they will do is look at it and say, if the general fund is looking like they have an imbalance during any of those measurement periods, and this again is based on a cash basis of accounting. So they're not going to look at any kind of accruals. The budget director at New York State is authorized to adjust or reduce any of those general fund amounts into the state aid special revenue fund appropriations by any amount that's needed for the 2021 fiscal year. So when we look at what we're considering as in balance and what does that mean, it really means that basically they're either not receiving the amount of tax revenues that they have, which are, and it could be less than 99% of the estimated operating funds, or their disbursements or spending are at 101%, or a combination of both. There is a caveat in the governor's bill that says, yes, maybe the division of budget can recommend this. The legislator can overrule that, but obviously I find that very unlikely to happen, especially as the governor is having this. The unknown, as I mentioned, is how those adjustments will be calculated. We don't know how they're going to be calculated. And we're for that, and we're also wondering how that's going to impact state aid to schools. So as Dr. Cluccio mentioned, there's a moving target as far as the budget timelines. So there was a March 30th executive order that delays the May 19th, which, as you know, which traditionally would have been our budget vote, and is now postponed to at least June 1st. So it's not even a hard definite date as far as June 1st. It's at a minimum is going to be June 1st. And again, that's subject to further directive with related to the timing or the location or how that voting is going to happen or what manner that's going to be. Because obviously, if we're still in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, they're not going to have everybody coming out and at the polls to vote. So it may be, we don't know if it's going to be turning over to the board to make that decision and have that final vote. That has also been proposed out there. At this point, we don't know. We are hoping, obviously, we would like to have those dates because all those budget deadlines are statutorily defined in ed law. So we're still kind of waiting because a lot of those deadlines are based in allows us to determine those dates for the budget hearing, when the budget, the mailing of the budget notices are be done. And then still on the state ed website is still saying that we should be filing our property tax cap by April 24th or 26th, which obviously is impossible to do at this point in light of the looming review period. And I'd like to take a look back. So when we were last together in March, our original rollover budget was 1.9% or close to $1.5 million increase. And that really, in that budget, it maintained all of our current programming and staff, and that included any of the additions that we had in the prior year. So we really were in a, I didn't think in a bad state at that point because we were less than 2% at that point. However, now that we look where we are at now, we had to go back and sit with administrators and our staff, and we had to sharpen our pencils because we did have a significant loss in revenue. So now when we sharpened our pencil, the new rollover budget is 77.3 million roughly, which is really less than 1% increase at a 0.086% from the 1920 budget, which is really only about $70,000. Part of that, which was helpful, is that increased or minimized the savings with our health insurance change, which realized $1 million, a little over $1 million savings, because otherwise we would be looking at a further cut. Some of the savings that we looked at when we looked at the rollover budget was about $250,000 in BOCES and other programming areas, and some even in our maintenance program. The staff savings, and we'll look again at that next slide, when we reviewed everything, was close to $1.1 million, which includes all of our fringes, for a total of $1.4 million from the budget that was presented in March.
Whoa.
Right. So when we look at those savings that we were sharpening our pencils for, some of those savings, as I mentioned, are realized is shifting of positions to grants. So where some positions that were originally in our general fund will now be supported by grant funding. We are saving some money in retirements and due to attrition with retirements and resignations by not filling those positions. And then there are vacant positions that were in budget last year that were never filled, that we're going forward and saying we're not filling them. There's going to be impacts across the board, both instructional and non-instructional positions. So right now we're looking at those total budgeted positions that were originally in the budget is about 15 positions. So just to give you a look back here is what we presented in March. So when you look at the percentage change there, it was 1.9 million. You look at our state aid was close to 51 million, which really at that point we were over by expenditures close to 2.6, and we did have included in it the TRS reserve, which at that point we would have needed 3.1 million in appropriated fund balance. That's again including the TRS reserve. Now, as we look where we are now, so what I'm presenting, showing you here is what I like to say pre and post COVID-19. From 1920 to where we are now, the last budget is 1.9. We're now at, as I mentioned, less than 1%. The biggest area to look at when you look at it is our state aid revenues. They went down significantly. And then what we're doing down at expenditures over our revenue with the latest budget is about 2.3 million over where we were where we're going to need some money. And that included, I want to make sure I put this out there. Included in those revenue numbers is a 3.5% levy increase. And we are taking out the TRS reserve.
Colleen, isn't the TRS going up next year?
The TRS is about 10.25%. So we had the TRS in the budget.
Did you have it?
The TRS reserve. Okay, so the TRS reserve is us taking money and setting it aside for a rainy day. And I don't think, and again, that's your decision. I don't think it's at this point to take $500,000 and put it in a reserve for future use.
This was the first year this reserve was offered by law. Yeah. There was no money in it before, but we thought when Colleen's first budget, look, we've got some savings. Right. Let's put this away. For the first time, the legislature says you can have a reserve for future retirees. But with COVID-19, her proposal is, look, we can't save in the retirement this year, maybe in the future. Right. But at this point, wherever we could save anything, she had appropriated half a million to put into that reserve. But now you'll see she's removed it totally because of COVID-19.
Because if you look here on this slide, you're going to see right here where our state aid went down over $1 million, which is really, if you took $500,000, you're going to add impact to that. You would have $1.5 million. So to be conservative, we took that out of there.
But to your answer, you directed, Dr. Bush, yes, the retirement did go up this year in terms of the percentage that we had to give her. I think it went up about 1%. It said about 9.
We're
10. It used to be 9 the year before. It went up a point and a half.
Not all, even less. Yeah. So here, as we're looking at here, you can, again, this is just really comparing from our 2021 rollover to our current budget, which we're proposing, which you can see the difference from the budget that was proposed in March to now. You can see our expenditures went down close to 2%. And our revenue, you can see the revenue levy, which brings us again back down. I just wanted to show you the difference between the last time we presented and what a difference it made with those state aid reductions. However, the good news is we are still keeping in the budget because that does give us additional savings. We are currently maintaining the current level of P-Tech students, no new slots. The one big thing that we are doing is moving our cyber tech P-Tech students from CAP region BOCES to HFM. So we have 29 students that are participating that were at one time participation in CAP region, and we're now moving those to HFM. We've had discussions with them, and HFM is quite excited about gaining those new students, so that's a positive. We did have to do reduce some of the 80K student reductions because of the increase that BOCES was indicating. It was a large amount for the restructuring of their program. And again, to revisit, we did thankfully have the health insurance savings of 1.2 million. Who knew that would have been a big boom for us going forward in this budget? It really was part of our savior. So we had talked about buying 2 bus propositions and going out to bond on those. I think in the current situation with the debt service and what we're looking for, I think we could go and we have $1 million bus reserve to utilize that bus reserve. And again, that's going to be voted upon you whether or not you want to utilize the bus reserve or still go out with a bond. So let's look back again under the tax levy limit under the tax cap. As we know, our maximum allowable tax levy was a little over 22 million, 22.6, which was at 8.62%. Again, we're proposing to go with it to increase the tax levy by 3%, 3.5%. And again, looking back, this will be the first year after 4 years of 0% tax increase, which really is the total of $730,000. I'm recommending that we still go forward with the 3.5. 0% or lower would result in further programming and staffing positions. And if you look at that, and it equates to about up to 10 positions. And I really caution the overuse of fund balance, especially when they're looking at prediction the flat 8 for 21-22 and possibly the year after. And we are also looking at where we always refer to these first reductions as tier 1. Tier 2 will probably most likely have to happen because of that April review when the state looks back at their revenues and their spending. So that may possibly result in another 5 positions in of itself. So if you look at the 15 that we're proposing, you don't do the 3.5, that's 10. That's 25 positions, and then if you add on what I'm thinking is about $500,000, that would be another 5 positions.
Do we have to pass the budget tonight?
No.
We're almost getting to that question. Good.
Yeah, right.
Good.
Right.
You're real sharp in where we are.
So really, I mean, no, we can't. I really recommend not voting tonight, only because of that April look back period. That's a key part, and talking to other business officials in the area, and I know Dr. Cluccio talked to other superintendents, it's highly recommended that nobody passes their budget until that April 30th deadline. So where we know more of the impact of that April 1st, April 30th look back period. So right here, as we look back, I just want to remind you of how this will impact the taxpayer because of the growth in our tax base. The 3.5%. The only really impact that will impact is really the city of Amsterdam, and we're looking at $120 on a $100,000 investment.
Oh boy, that's what.
All right, well.
I've got a quick question for you on the rollovers. Okay, so we know the bus transportation have not been working for the last 7 weeks, whatever. Has the state already rolled over and taken that money from us, or is that money that we are saving by not using the transportation? Is that sitting there somewhere?
Good question. The CARES Act and the governor both told us, we're paying you, we're giving you state aid, pay your people. It's very clear in the CARES Act and in the governor, if you're getting state aid, which we are, pay your people. Now, what we did do, Colleen and I sat down with our bus vendor and reduced his pay to 70% of what he's getting. He's still paying the drivers, but we went through his contract and we reduced his monthly allotment is about $325,000. He's taken a cut about $124,000 a month. So we've already done that. Again, we had to look at his contract, and we had to work with our lawyers, but we went to him and he has accepted a reduction of 30% because we still have the CARES Act he's still paying his driver, and we still have state aid that we're receiving on it. But it's a great question. We sat down early on and reduced by 1/3 his monthly allotment.
Is that figured in
By
the budget?
1/3 or 2/3?
No,
It's by 30%.
30%.
30%.
30%.
And then what about the fuel? Because we pay for all of the fuel. What's happening with that?
We're not paying for any fuel, obviously, now, even though he's using some fuel to deliver our meals, but we're not, that's on his dime.
So, you know, and when you think about it, there's a dual-fold purpose in doing that. Obviously, you know, there's always a hardship on that for anybody to retain bus drivers. So here you take a look at it. If we did not pay him, he laid off all those bus drivers. Those bus drivers found another job. How are we going to get them back in the fall?
So what did you do with the fuel money?
The fuel money is in our general fund.
Okay, so we're rolling that over to next year then, correct?
That will go into fund balance at the end of the year, correct?
Good point. But we looked at that entire contract, Curtis, to make sure we weren't paying for anything and making sure that he was still paying his drivers, which again, part of the CARE Act, very clear. If you're getting the reserve, if you're getting paid, it's not something that we could take and put on reserve because we've been told we have to pay the people. Paying the teachers, we're paying the administrators, we're paying all of them are receiving them.
So you're also, you brought up the fact about the BOCES with Amsterdam High. That's almost $1 million you have for the expenditures. And that is, you know, you don't have anything budgeted for the alt ed at all. So we're definitely not going to be sending any of our high school students up to the Adirondack Academy.
No, there's budget. It's in there. It's in the A2110 code. There's two.
Give me the. So it's 2110. What's the last four?
I'm looking for it. It's gonna have a 490 expenditure in there.
A 490.
Correct.
Yeah, it's a 490. It's under the 490 series. But I'm looking and I see clearly, unless you call it, you know, that's expenditures for this year, but nothing budgeted under that either.
I'll about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 page in at the top. So where you see the 2110 teaching reg school summary.
Yeah. Okay. So, right.
So, did you put that pasta away?
So above that, I see the 7302 under the 54140 series. So are you saying that that's the budgeted amount we're going to be using?
So, right. If you look at 2110 490 0451.
Right.
BOCES, that's 981 750.
Okay.
Okay, so between the high school and the middle school, we're going to be using close to a little over $1 million.
Which is 80%.
Right.
80%.
Okay.
And that's
So,
about students.
you know, they're going to be losing Mr. Potter up there as the principal, I understand. Is that correct?
So what they're doing is they're changing the model of the 80K program. So whereas where all the students were under one room and one teacher, they're now splitting it
by grade level.
Correct.
Right.
So
7th and 8th graders will be in a different location.
7 to 9, yeah.
7 through 9.
So 7 to 9 is in one section, and then 10 through 12 is in another section. So they split the classroom, and they're doing a different model.
Right.
By doing so, obviously, they increase costs. So last year we had 44 students, I think, in 80K. This year, obviously, because of budget constrictions, We reduced it to 25. And this again was the discussions with Tyrone and Liz at the middle school.
Right. All right. All right.
Okay.
And is there a reason why our teachers' salaries went down on that? I remembered wanting on the special ed programs. Let me give you a number. Okay, it's going to be the 150-0300 series under 2250, Colleen. That's a change of, it says on here, I've noted down that it stated $363,000, a decrease.
I'm not sure where you're looking.
Okay, go on under, well, it's just under the BOCES program that we were talking about. Go to the it's going to be the 2250 series. Okay. And then the code number is 150-0300.
Okay, so take below it, because again, we have to, it's not, we have to break them out now. So there's going to be another 150,000 added back on there. So really, we're looking at about a 210 reduction, and I believe that's due to retirements.
So these are special ed teachers that are retiring then?
Correct.
All right, that's all I have right now.
Okay, let's finish it up. We'll go through the rest.
Okay, so, you know, when we look back, we can briefly go over this slide. It's really, when we look back in March, we said reality, is it not possible to freeze aid? Well, we were wrong.
Colleen, say that again. Colleen, can you repeat that?
So when we back in March, we asked the reality, is it possible times like that, but reduce it? But obviously with the COVID, nobody anticipated that, and it had a huge impact. So again, as we back we said we needed to be conservative in our aid projections, no unnecessary spending. Obviously, we weren't expecting over $1 million aid cut. So a couple things I just want to briefly go over. There are some STAR changes. The STAR exemption remains at a 0%. If you remember, the governor a couple of years ago decided to change the way you get your STAR credits or STAR deductions by changing them to two separate programs. One is your exemption, which is the deduction that comes right off your school tax bill, and the other one is the STAR credit, where you get the check in the mail. So what he is trying to do is saying you can get an increase. He wants you to enroll in the STAR credit. You will get an increase of 2%. However, if you stay in the STAR exemption, you're going to remain flat at 0%. So this year, another piece of legislation that they proposed is that any delinquent property tax owners will be disallowed from getting any STAR credit. Lastly, the last piece of news, and I hate to bring this up, is that property tax relief credit that, you know, most school districts kept saying we got to stay under our tax credit, our tax cap. This was an incentive for all of our taxpayers. That is sunsetted in legislation. So it is no longer applicable. So even if we stay under the tax cap, nobody's going to get that rebate check. I think it's another way for the governor to say, obviously, he's saving funding. Another change was, you know, last year when changing the paid time off for voting, he repealed much of the paid time off that was enacted last year. It caused a lot of concern with the school districts. So it reinstates the threshold that any paid time off to vote is for those who do not have 4 consecutive hours before or after work. A lot of you know that the polls are open 4 hours before and 4 hours after. And he amended it to give paid time off for amount from 3 hours back to 2 hours. So looking forward, this is where we still, obviously, that I keep mentioning that April, this month's look back period is key going forward. We have to, you know, every day we're monitoring the budget deadlines and state progress, where all of our colleagues are on, trying to figure out different ideas. So looking at that, really, I recommend that at our May 20th budget vote, once we know what's going on this next month, will tell us where we are more of where we are. Obviously, things can change depending on what happens. I'm recommending that we do a May 20th budget vote, which will allow us some time to prepare. Obviously, there's a lot of documents that need to be posted on the website, mailed out to taxpayers, and then by that time, we'll have a clear picture, a question mark, of the state aid dollars and the state budget shortfalls.
So really, we've got to see what this April brings.
Correct.
April 1st through April 30th, does it, that's the adjustment in state aid. And if you can hear the governor, he says he doesn't have two nickels to rub together. That was his comment the other day on his Q&A part of his daily press conference. I think Colleen did a nice job. There's still some questions that you may have. There's still adjusting that can be done. We've done tier 1 reductions. We are holding on tier 2 reductions to see where we need to go. We have done it. It says 15 positions. Remember, we stopped hiring. We stopped spending as soon as Corona started. That day we issued no more spending. Therefore, we really only have about two staff members currently who are impacted of those 15 positions reduced at this point. Again, we try to do it several ways. Impact the least number of students. Maintain programs we promised they would have. Try to do it equitably throughout the organization, not just teachers or administrators, secretaries, maintenance, do some throughout the entire organization. If you promise programs to kids, keep them going. The least number impacted, and keep the taxpayer in mind. When we did that, we ended up with, there are going to be programs that are going to be hurt. We're going to show the board between now and the next week or so that tier 1 cuts and the impact on each of them and the cost savings to get to the savings where Colleen wanted to at this point. Again, we've got 3.5 tax increase. You saw what that has. We are ready to go into tier 2 if the April proceedings by the governor go the way we think they're going to go. But at this point, this is a balanced budget for next year, using up, as you saw, 2.5 million out of the fund balance at this point.
Correct.
So, question.
Yeah.
I have one quick question. Dr. Tahoe, but Acting Commissioner Tahoe, did you hear what happened in her meeting? Because the governor went and he has put a freeze on the 2% annual increase for the state employees. Do you know if they have come out and said that there's going to be a freeze on our faculty and staff members or not?
No, the only thing I know is that, in the past when we've done this, and I've done this about 3 to 5 times, but in the past, those are local negotiations through New York State United Teachers and the bargaining units in each district. So the contract's the contract, and that's typically, as this shoe keeps falling, another shoe falls. That's one of the things that comes up. But again, that's a local contract, and that's what, in the past, that's the way it's been handled out of the 700 school districts. Each of them have individual contracts. Unless the state, as the national has one time, Richard Nixon put a stop on pay increases nationally. I haven't heard that from the governor in terms of individual contracts. Typically, NYSET works with local districts, and they do their own review of their contracts.
Thank you.
We haven't heard anything happening with respect to school districts at this point, Mr. Pettinger.
All right. I have 3 questions for Colleen, if I might. And I think there are quick questions or answers. Yeah, okay. Well, we'll see. I know we're closely monitoring the state aid situation, and we should know something by the 20th. We normally get a number of emails relating to what the governor has said. My question to you, Colleen, is would you communicate to us the information that you receive so that we might have a clearer understanding of what adjustments the state has made?
Are you looking, going forward, giving you updates on a regular basis?
No, not on a regular basis, but
Okay.
after the 30th, or after April 30th, we should have a clearer understanding of the adjustments that the state has made. I'm interested in that information.
Oh, absolutely. Once we get that information, and obviously all of us sit in, our business officials, we all get together and we're wondering how those are going to be calculated, because really all of us are sitting there wondering where we're going to go with our budgets. It's that unknown, and we don't know how the governor is going to do that. They're directed that he has to maintain a maintenance of effort with school district, but that's really a 3-year average going back to prior years.
Right.
Okay. So if you're maintaining your foundation aid at a flat level,
yes,
that result in your foundation aid in prior 2 years. Thankfully, Amsterdam has received a good portion of foundation aid. A lot of other districts aren't fortunate. So if those districts are relying on that foundation aid and they look at a 3-year look back, they're going to be in a whole lot of a worse situation. We're going to be bad enough, but they're going to be worse.
Right.
So,
Reverend, there's another thing that we've been watching the last couple of Saturdays. The School Boards Association has had a webinar at about 1 o'clock. We'll send you those announcements as school board members. That webinar is available for you. And on that webinar is the governor's representative, the interim commissioner, a couple of other people, school boards members. So there's webinars. They've held them 2 weeks in a row. They're talking about them. We'll make sure you get those information for the webinars as well.
I appreciate that. Here's the second question. I want to make sure I heard you correctly, Colleen, that the current bus reserve is $1 million.
Correct.
Did I hear that correctly?
Correct.
Okay. See, I told you these are quick. The last one is, while I appreciate the work that you have done to adjust and move things from the general fund and using other fund balances, it would be helpful to me to have a list of the fund balances or the funds that we use. We used to have that.
Talking about the special aid fund?
I'm sorry?
Are you talking about the funds that we utilize as far as our special aid fund where we have our grants?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
We can do
And
that.
that would be helpful for me to have that again.
No, if you know, the special aid funds do not have a fund balance. You are aided on what you spent. So it's a straight revenue in and expenditure out.
Okay.
There is a possibility for carryover, but that is not fund balance. Okay.
Right. When you say that instead of using the general fund for some of these budgetary issues, you have used other funds.
Correct. So where
Okay.
you have a position that's costing $40,000 in the general fund, is now going to be paid with special aid funds.
Right. So I'm looking for a list of those funds. That's what I'm asking for.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
By the way, just to add on, we've reviewed this once with our bargaining unit presidents. We will do this again with them. We've let them know all along where we stand. We've let them know about reductions, and we'll bring them in again after this evening's meeting to tell them that, we briefed the board. This is where we are. This is different than our first briefing with the board presidents, because obviously it's changed in a couple, 3 weeks since we've been under COVID-19.
Okay, but we
just
don't
a
have
quick
to.
question.
We don't. Go ahead, John.
Okay. Colleen, what is the remaining general fund balance after that 2.3 is removed?
if we use the 2.3, we'll have about a little over 8 million left.
Okay, thanks.
How about when you sent through the all of the funds, special funds that we have, you put the amount that is in the fund also on that report for us? Because I think some budget officers are very good and they've been very creative. The state allows them to make some funds and other funds can't be made, where they could be used towards general fund, payments. So if you could kind of define that, because some of these funds that have been created by the previous budget officer were funds that can only be used for that fund item and not switch back to the general fund.
So the special aid fund, obviously, it's in of itself. That's not something that you can switch on and off. I think you're referring to our reserve funds.
Yeah, I when he said funds, I thought you would include the reserve funds. That's why I'm asking if you would include the reserve funds with those the aid funds that you were talking about, because I think that will be the eye opener to the board members to see the reserve funds we've got.
So what I can do is send you a trial balance, and then that trial balance, because there's no detail as far as those reserve funds, I can send you a trial balance, which will show you the balance in each of those accounts. There's no appropriations for those, obviously. Okay.
Well, I'm happy that we don't have to vote on this tonight. I know that when you prepare a budget this year, you're really looking at the budget for next year. The other item that scares me a bit is I don't want the district to get into the situation that the Johnstown School District got into.
Right.
And I think that the district has been spoiled for the past 4 years with no increase in taxes, but to go and our surrounding areas are going to benefit because they went down. But I still think that we need to take a look. Let's see what happens between now and the next time we have to come to meet, because there's a lot of people out there. I'm preaching to the choir, I know, but I'm really worried to go up to a 3.5% increase in the school tax. It's not over with yet. It's not done yet. So let's keep going on and see what Sandra has to say, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Colleen, another quick question. So when Dr. Bush says no tax increase, didn't we have a tax increase, but we stayed under the cap? Is that what was happening?
No, we haven't had any tax increase for the past 4 years.
Okay, but
no tax increase.
All right. Thank you.
And then I think there was a period of time before that we were at zero for a while.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, when I
Okay.
it seems to me the majority of the time that I've been on the board, we were able to not have a tax increase. So I'm not. I agree, John. I just have to think more.
Yep.
Okay, hold on a second.
Okay, we're technical stuff.
9 o'clock.
No,
Colleen, can I ask something for clarification?
Sure.
The 3.5% tax increase,
Oh, with 6 pills.
that if we go with that, we have also at least 10 positions that need to be cut.
So when we look at April, and if the governor, what we're estimating is a $500,000 additional aid decrease, that equates to approximately about 10 more positions.
Okay, and those are positions that are maybe unfilled at this point?
No, we took those out on the first round. What you might help understand, 1% brings in 200,000. Okay, so if you take 3.5%, you're at about 700,000. That's our revenue from increasing the taxes by 3.5. If you take that 700,000 and you convert it to teaching positions, that's about 10 teaching positions at 70. So if we look at, now, if they're not all teaching positions, it might be 15 positions with aides and secretaries and custodians. And so our first tier, we did it through attrition. We took out about 15 spots, but it was only 2 real people. Once you start doing that, the second tier, which is the 700,000, then it gets into real people. So that, but again, 1% brings in 200,000. 3.5% brings in 700,000. And that's the way we're looking at it. If we go back to tier 2, depending upon what happens now till April, during April, then we'll prepare it. We haven't done tier 2. We will show you tier 1 and the impact on the program and people. But again, tier 1, we stopped hiring a lot of folks. We've left positions open. If you're retired, we're going to say, okay, you have to fill that. We examined every single retiree position and laid it up against our goals. And that's how we came up with about 2 out of the 15 positions.
Okay.
And that's about $250,000 in administrative cuts so far.
So that's just on the tax levy. And then we're also looking at if there is another $500,000 taken out from Wayfair in April, we're looking at another 5 positions. Again, roughly. So overall, 15 plus 10 plus 5, you're talking close to 30. That's a lot.
I know this district has done this once before.
Right.
They reminded me of, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. Some of you board.
School closed too, right? Well, that, but.
So again, some of this is unknown. And as I heard one board member said, I'm glad we don't have to vote on it tonight.
Yep. I'm hoping we can find some more nooks and crannies.
Exactly. Because this district can't absorb 30 people missing.
No.
Sorry, we can't do that.
No.
No, and then when you really think about it, you know, it's minimal, to me, I think it's a minimal impact on the taxpayer, especially after 4 years, 5 years maybe, of a tax increase. We're talking $120. But then you're also looking at the livelihood of 20, 25 positions. You know, when you look at those people that are going to be out of jobs.
You can't lose that many people in this district.
No.
And as you know, we stretch our staffing as far as it is right now. Do a great job with our kids, but I really don't feel losing those positions is going to help our district, you know, especially when we talk about improving student outcomes, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So here's Sandra.
So I'm going to talk about our online educational plan quickly, then I'm going to talk about report cards, and then I'm going to talk about paid transportation. So starting with our
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'll speak louder. Can everybody see my screen up here of my phone?
No.
You can't see it?
Do you want us all to mute so we can hear you a little bit better?
Sure, but can you see my screen?
Yes. I was gonna ask.
Oh, yeah.
You can see it? Okay.
Is that phase 1 of education?
Yeah. Yes, that's it.
Okay.
So I want to talk about our online educational plan, which consisted of basically 2 phases. Phase 1 of the online educational plan started on March 16th and it ended on March 31st. And during that time, teachers and support staff worked collaboratively in developing 2 weeks worth of review packets for students pre-K through 12. And the packets were picked up by families at our school sites during lunch distribution between 11 and 1 p.m. During this phase 1 time, Chromebooks were distributed and for basically students for grades 3 through 12. And all information regarding review packets and home instruction were posted on the GASD website by our communication specialist, John Nelson. Phase 2. So phase 2 of our online education plan basically began on April 1st and it's going to end on April 29th because that's when the governor says we are returning to school. So that's that's when our phase 2 will end. Again, during this phase time, Chromebooks were distributed for students and through K-12 this time. So last time it was just 3 through 12 because we wanted to make sure we had enough Chromebooks for everybody. But we did have enough Chromebooks. We did extend it K through 12 this time. A total of 1,705 Chromebooks were distributed, and GASD started online instruction utilizing Google Classroom for pre-K through 12. Teachers began posting assignments with new concepts and skills aligned to the curriculum. Teaching continues this week through spring break per governor's order, and technology and instructional support is provided for teachers by instructional coaches, curriculum leaders and coordinators, and building level technology leaders. And all information regarding home instruction is posted on the GASD website, as well as resources to facilitate parents and student usage of technology. That's basically our phase 1 and our phase 2 education plan. Moving forward, we want to talk about report cards. So report cards. So basically for pre-K, the report cards were mailed home on Friday, April 3rd. And for K through 5, that's the second trimester report cards, grades were closed on March 22nd. And report cards were not mailed home, or were not obviously mailed home. They were actually posted on the parent portal on Friday, April 10th. And ENL report cards were actually mailed home on Tuesday, April 14th. So that was yesterday, I believe, yes. So for 6 through 12, the proposal for report cards for 6 through 12 is as follows. Quarter 3 grades is going to be based on instruction through March 13th. Students will have the opportunity to complete makeup work for quarter 3 until May 15th. And then, of course, the report cards will be posted on the parent portal, but we still haven't determined which date that's going to happen. For fourth quarter, it's still to be determined. We are discussing upgrading with other districts as well with HFM BOCES to determine our next steps. A decision we'll be making regarding fourth quarter report cards will probably be made by April 20th. So we still really don't know what we're going to do with fourth quarter report cards. The intent is if we come back on April 29th, then we're just going to basically give grades during that time. We're going to give that pass fail or not. We're just basically going to allow kids to have their own grades. But again, we need to have further discussion regarding this. And then I want to talk about UPK transportation. So I know we talked a little bit about this at our last board meeting, I believe, or actually I gave out the proposal to all the board members at our last board meeting. And what we are proposing for UPK transportation is basically eliminating it, and for the following reason. So the law states that transportation must be offered equally to all children in like circumstances residing in the district. So now this means that if we offer transportation to 4-year-olds, then we must offer transportation to our 3-year-olds. And as you know, we do have 3-year-old students that go to Whispering Pines and Head Start. So we have a total of 78 3-year-olds. Out of those 78 3-year-olds, there's about, on average, about 20 students who will start on September 1st as 2-year-olds, right? So that means we would have to actually put 2-year-olds on the bus. We're worried about the safety issues of our students. We really don't feel comfortable putting 2-year-olds on a bus. So that's one main reason why we definitely want to eliminate UPK transportation. Also, there is an additional cost to transport the 3-year-olds. We estimated it was going to be about $140,000. So total cost for transportation for transporting our 3 and 4-year-olds is going to be about $305,000, and it's going to be non-aidable. So this is non-aidable money. So, you know, we want to know from, you know, input from the Board of Education. Of course, you know, we want to know whether you're going to support us on our limiting transportation or not. So we would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, has this savings? I know you have to wait for the Board of Education, but in light of the budget presentation, when you have to transport 3 and 4-year-olds, you're also going to have to transport 2-year-olds. Is that correct?
Yes. So there will be students. I can't see you. Oh, is that Mr. Murdoch laughing?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
hold on.
Sorry.
So that is yes, we would have to transport.
And don't you also need car seats for these children?
Absolutely. Car seats and extra aids on the bus for 2-year-olds. Yes.
Okay. So my next question is, because we just heard a budget presentation, is this presently in the budget? And if it is, if the board decides not to do the transportation piece, has this amount of money, could this be put toward the savings in the budget?
So that's the Colleen question, right?
So what's in there? So last year, what we did is part of it was funded through the general fund. And again, this is just on the current level students. So adding in these kids, we did not put them in the budget yet because we were waiting to hear whether you're going to say yay or nay. 50,000 is in the budget only for the run for the 3 and 4 year olds.
The 4-year-olds. Just so that
The
would be the
4-year-olds,
Whispering Pine bus run, right?
Right.
So this doesn't even count the cost of the bus run then?
Correct. We would have to add that. Well, you would have to add in back in the aids. You would have to add in the cost of the harnesses. So really think about it. You put that money back in, it's going to increase the budget. And remember, UPK transportation is not aidable.
Okay, so
aid on that.
Absolutely not.
Correct.
No.
In speaking with Sandra, the biggest issue is, when you look at the funding, yes, it's one thing. But when you think about those little kids on the bus and you really think about the liability that the district and the safety of those kids, and I didn't really even think 2 aides per bus would even cut it.
Yeah, they're babies.
They're babies.
Right now, 4-year-olds ride with the big kids here.
So for our GASD students, we have 108 students that attend UPK here in Amsterdam. So yeah, they are on the same bus as the K-5 students. So that's no additional cost. However, we would have to pay for bus runs going to Head Start and going to Whispering Pines, and that's where the cost is going to come.
Well, I'm in favor of taking that cost of the transportation and putting it toward a reduction of our school budget, our school tax budget. That's my opinion.
Good opinion, Nellie.
So we got 2.
So I'll be a third.
We got 3.
Sandra, I think I've expressed to you my biggest concern is how is this going to affect enrollment?
Wow.
So
because I know that I mentioned to you, I know there was a teacher from Johnstown who said the minute they eliminated transportation, they lost half of their UPK program.
So my suggestion is maybe make this a pilot, see how it goes. Just to get the data and see how many kids are not going to attend because of transportation, and then look at the data for next year, and then decide next year whether or not we put it back in or not.
Once you give it, you can't take it away. So we give it now. We're committed.
I worry about the students that need it the most. I completely understand the liability aspect of things. Transporting 2-year-olds, that's a whole different ballgame than what we've previously had with even 4-year-olds, some 3 and going into 4-year-olds. But we don't want the students that need it the most, those are the ones that need the transportation.
They don't need it.
Well, I think the other thing to remember is this voice is terrible. I don't know if you can hear me, but I think one of the things that we've talked about in the past is that we have given Whispering Pines and we have given the children who attend a preschool program elsewhere. It's costing the district a lot of money for the transportation. Now, my point is, and I appreciate what Deanna has to say. When you take away, first of all, our first priority is what is the services that we give to kids. Transportation, here's a big nut that we can help put toward the percentage of the budget. And I don't know, to me, $350,000 is a lot of money to save on the tax rate. I feel strongly about that, and I can't speak for anybody else, but I can speak for myself. And this volume and this voice is terrible. I don't know if you can hear me.
We got you.
We can hear you, Dr. Bush.
We can hear you.
Every word.
And so if I can try to share a couple of thoughts. I'm torn. I do appreciate the concern of 2-year-olds. I share those concerns with having the right equipment. But I would disagree with Mr. Murdoch to say that there are no one that needs it. We don't know that. There may be some who do, But where I am torn is listening to the challenges we have had and this past year with bus runs. Those are mighty young children to be on the bus long, or whatever the other problems were, transported to the wrong place, or parents would not know how long the bus would get to them. Those are some critical issues that I think need to be resolved if we are going to think about having younger children than 4 and 3.
And we've had preliminary discussions with our transportation company and indicated, you know, what impact if we did transport them and what didn't. And they indicated by eliminating those runs, it will help transportation for the rest of our district as far as getting the kids to school on time and not having to ride those long hours on the bus. And I know talking to Part and Fonda, they are eliminating with their district as well.
Can you say that again? Tell me at the tail end there.
Part and Fonda, they are also eliminating pre-K transportation. Theirs was a little less restrictive than ours. They were just doing it for their kids that were riding on the bus, but they're eliminating it 100% next year as well.
Okay, so this is all effective next year. Do we have any case studies for instances where this has happened in prior years that we can look at?
A few districts in New York State that actually offers UPK transportation.
So it's
Gotcha.
hard to
Okay.
Very
because
hard.
there are, in fact, a number of school districts do not take the pre-K money. It's still left on the table of the state because they can't pay for the rest of the stuff that goes with it. They leave the money at the state. If you go there, you'll see a large amount of money, pre-K money, on the table at the state, just because, look, they're giving you how much a kid? For Sandra, how much they give you a kid?
It's approximately $10,000.
10,000. We spend 20 a kid. So you know you're looking at taking a lot of your state aid for special programs and putting it toward transportation. You could have been putting it toward programs instead. And I agree with Deanna. You're going to lose some people. We don't know how many, but I'm going to tell you one other thing. Go to neighborhood schools, put the pre-K in those schools. You're going to lose less of them because they're going to be in their neighborhood. Right now, these kids are riding all around the city from their homes, because that's what you've got. You've got a transportation system. To Reverend's point, this will lessen the need for a lot of transportation and focus on, let's transport those kindergartens to 12th graders the right way. And that'll help us.
So I hope you don't mind me weighing in on this. You know, you read all these studies through the years. I mean, not going back 10, but 20, 30 years, where we're being told how effective the pre-K programs are towards bringing, you know, students when they enter school and they come in prepared in kindergarten, and they are prepared in first and second grade only because of that foundation that they've received during the pre-K programs, especially if you have a really effective pre-K program. So if you're bringing pre-K to this, you know, to the elementary schools, you know, we'd really have to look the program over, because supposedly the programs like the Head Start program and Whispering Pines are effective, you know, when they matriculate into kindergarten from those schools. So I'm kind of concerned about what loss we would have, especially when the student doesn't have a parent, like I'm sure, and I'm only guessing, but I would imagine Deanna probably could drive her kids to the school. Others are not that lucky. That's the ones Kent is talking about. But I have to admit, you know, in the government, everything is waiverable. Everything is waiverable. I would imagine if we kind of, and I don't know who set this rule, if it's coming up from the federal level, the federal education, but that rule for the 2-year-olds, because they do fit into that 3-year-old group, that seems absolutely like insanity because all I can imagine is some programs are just changing diapers most of the day. You know, it just is not right. So I don't know if we could waiver and request a waiver that we not have the 2-year-olds in. I don't know that. Okay, but with that said, that's a lot of money that we would be spending, and I think my main problem has been our kids that we have in our district that are having to get on the bus at 6 a.m. and ride. And I'm really concerned about those Techler students, because if you look at that map, that red map begins over here and it goes all the way around. So, you know, there's a lot of things to look at, but if they can't waiver that 2-year-old thing, it would make sense not to do it. But boy, we'll be losing a major program that would help the students get ready for when they get older.
You're not losing a program. You're not losing a program. You're losing transportation that can can have a major impact on the tax rate that we have to look at going forward. I mean,
Is there an option? I think, sorry, Nellie, go ahead.
Well, no, it's okay.
Would there be an option? I think I had asked Sandra this to you, to modify our entry age. I mean, our cutoff is effective December 1st. Can we theoretically move our cutoff earlier?
The grant actually states the cutoff dates. So
Gotcha.
the grant application, it'll say by December 1st, they have to be a 3-year-old to enter the 3-year-old program, and then by December 1st, they have to be 4-year-old to enter the 4-year-old program. So it's
Okay.
rules, guidelines from the grant.
Okay, so it's not something we could adapt.
It's not a policy that we would create or change.
Do you need a vote from us tonight on that issue, or just direction? Just direction saying, let's not follow it?
Like a
Verbal direction.
Right. We just want to make sure that the decision we do make, we want the support of the board. We just don't want to make a decision without your support. You know?
Well, I value everybody's opinion, but I think when you take a look at what we've been presented tonight, we have to ask Colleen to take this transportation money and see what impact it would have on the school budget going forward. I mean, it's not that we're taking away a service to children. The programs are still going to be there. However, we're eliminating something that technically you have to give it for all of them, not just a certain group. That being said, I think we need to take a look at what impact that would have on the tax. I don't know. Come on, other people's voice. Speak up.
Well, let me give you one other piece of it.
I
The
agree.
money spending on transportation, you can be putting it to programs. And you could be saving positions, because remember what I said, one of the things we're trying to do is take the general fund positions and put them into some of the other funds, the Fed and state funds. But if you're using it for transportation, there's not going to be that, you can't shift some of our general fund over there because they're using it to transport kids. So if you take the money we're going to spend, the $300,000, that could be 5 teaching positions that we could shift over to the state federal funds.
Exactly. And that's why I agree with Nellie at this point.
I think that's pretty self-explanatory from what we've been presented. I think it's just the emotional impact of hitting the program at the youngest of age, but I mean, there's really, based upon what Sandra's telling us about with the grant, you know, and is there a way that possibly it's costing per school $7,250 for a shuttle service? Why couldn't we ask our we're giving what, $10,000 per student? Why couldn't we ask the contractors that we have maybe to come up with a shuttle service idea themselves you know, to help out. I mean, anything.
Curtis, they're not going to, they're not going to
Yeah.
take their
All right.
resources
Well,
and their money to do
then
that.
the grim reality is facing the fact, because I'm looking. If you looked at what Colleen gave us here, we've got every single, because of the equalization rate sets, every single community is a deep. You know, it's not even funny. We've got an increase coming to us of $30.17 per 100,000, and you know, $30, it may not seem like much because, you know, in a year, but I'm telling you, exponential.
Considering what's going on, I think that we have to be. What's all that feedback? What's all that feedback?
Maybe the people that are on would mute again. I think we have some families in the background.
In light of what's going on with the virus and people that have lost their jobs, we need, as a school board, we have to be cognizant of that. We have to take a look at every opportunity that can go toward the budget next year. And we just, not that it's palatable for any of us, but where is it going to have the least amount of impact on our compulsory age students? If you're talking about staffing, you're also talking about what's more important, a teacher or a staff member for school age children, and eliminate all the liability and the transportation at $350,000 or whatever it is. I think we have to come to grips with that. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
There's no way around that. And you might better think about it now, because this isn't going to get better over the next 3 years. So
No. So are we going to give Colleen the direction?
I agree with most of what the board members are saying about eliminating the transportation. I understand money that can be reapportioned to staff and such. I only grieve. I realize that we're not ending a program. The program will still be there. We're talking only about transportation. But what we do not know is how many children that will affect not having the transportation.
Yep.
And even if it's 5, I grieve that. I just want to put that in the record. But I will support doing whatever we can reasonably do to relieve of the pressure on the budget.
So with that being said, we can
go
forward. We can ask. Oh, Curtis, just listen for a minute. We need to give Colleen direction. Colleen and the superintendent do not know what the governor is going to come forward with in the next week or so, okay? But we have to give Colleen some direction in order to take a look at that 3.5 increase. We just have to do that. That's what we have to do. That's our responsibility. Not that we want to or that we like to do it, but we have to give her some direction. And I think if we're looking at how we can affect the budget, then we have to let her do that. That's what I think that we need to do. We're not passing a budget tonight. We're going to give her some direction to take a look at what impact, not knowing what the governor is going to do.
Nellie, can I give you an example? Look at right here in just perusing the budget. There's $256,000 that was budgeted for equipment buses. And we've gone and we've rolled over. We've taken out 2,000, and this year it's only 2,500 that they've budgeted in. You know, what's the matter? We're not taking equipment any longer, or do you have that? I'm just trying to show that you've got like $250,000 in just sitting in areas that we really haven't looked at like maybe we should. Especially when we're talking about personnel changes, okay, and reductions. I don't see.
$1,000 in the equipment. There shouldn't be any equipment in buses.
I didn't hear you, Colleen.
You're probably looking at the 1920 budget, Curtis line.
Yeah, so we had 253,000 or 256,000.
Not in 2021.
Yeah, and not in 2021, I think you put down 2,500.
Right. Right. Because last year, if you recall, we bought the buses out of the general fund. This year, we're recommending that we use our reserve fund, but has no impact on the general fund. We removed $250,000 out of 2021.
Bill, do we have to take a vote on this?
No, we don't need a vote on that. No. I mean, we've got enough background. We're okay. We want to go to Christine now, Dr. Bush.
Well, no, I want to make sure that we're giving Colleen the right direction to go and reduce this transportation to show us the next time we meet what impact that has on the budget.
The only value that's in the budget this year for the transportation, because again, remember, I did not add it in because we were so uncertain of all the additional costs. We'll save $50,000. That's what I have in the budget for the pre-K. And then Sandra will save $50,000 or $75,000 on her side, which she can put into programming or staffing.
Staffing, yeah, that's gonna go to staffing.
And if it's not done, then the budget's going to be another 300,000 out of whack.
You got
Right,
it.
so to be, right.
But Colleen, this year or last year we had expenditures of transportation supervisors of 132,000, and then we budgeted up to 151 this year, and then the proposed budget is you're taking it to 179 for salaried transportation supervisors, with an increase of 28,000 just in that alone. We were hiring a transportation supervisor at $60,000, if you remember correctly. He was not able to fulfill the job because he had to go to Florida. I mean, and that fellow that's in charge of our custodial program and the buildings and grounds, he's no longer doing transportation. We hired so why do we have so much money going to our salary transportation supervisor of 179,000?
So no. Okay, so let's look back at it. When you're looking at the salaries for transportation, Mr. Stan or Stash is in the transportation because he is still doing transportation duties. Mr. Van Scoik, he's still doing the duties as well. He's doing an average about 15 hours a week. He still is doing those services. So we have two people still doing that services. We also have a new clerical position down there that's assisting with those.
Why can't we save money through keeping our teachers and the aides to help out the teachers in the classroom rather than getting another clerk this year? We definitely don't need it if we go to this redistricting plan. Did you see there's one complete school that will have no one taking the bus except for the special needs students? I mean, I don't understand why we're expending $180,000 from just last year. We were at 132, and I can't believe a man's working for 15 hours a week getting $60,000. And our director over grounds, and in the old days when Mr. Andrews was in charge, he really was in charge of the bus service. I don't understand why this new fellow we're budgeting, the Stash or whatever you call him, he's getting the same money plus more than Mr. Andrews, and he doesn't even do the same job.
Guys, we're not going to get out of here tonight. Let's get back to the agenda, please. Mr. Henninger's question, let's take him offline, and we'll give him an audit of the transportation department with the state aid and who's there. I think let's try to stick with this, and we can come back to those offline, those questions on that are sidebar.
Yeah, I mean, nothing's going to be finalized in the budget till we're all satisfied anyway with the discussion.
Yeah. We still
but I would like I'd like Colleen to go forward and just show us what happens if we eliminate the pre-K transportation. Could you
Well,
do that,
basically, it's
Carly?
gonna be a $50,000 savings.
Correct.
That's
How much?
50,000 is gonna change in the budget as it's presented now.
Plus another 75 in the special aid.
Yeah.
125,000 between
My funds.
one fund and the other.
But Nellie, what they're saying is they've already put in some of that savings.
Right.
If we don't continue along this line, then we're gonna see an increase. You know, it'll be more of a deficit.
Right.
Exactly.
By 300,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
No.
Go ahead.
I'm ready.
I think you read us well.
So, good evening. Hi, everyone. Obviously, through this whole pandemic, things have shifted to more remote meetings as we're doing this evening. That's been a new piece for our families and our students. And so just like we're learning here, our families are learning. All CSE meetings are remote. Parents have embraced that. Our teachers certainly have embraced it, but that's been a learning curve, obviously, for some of our parents. They've welcomed that. We've seen a huge increase in parent participation. Has been having students and parents on the phone or on the computer has been an added benefit to our meetings because we don't always have consistent participation by parents. So that's been a welcome addition during this challenging time for sure. But that's been running really very smoothly. As you know, related services through special education, many of our students receive physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy. During this time, that's posed many different unique situations and challenges. And our service providers have been eager to seek professional development opportunities and connect with parents and students. A variety of different ways to provide those services. They've called home, they've provided different activities, and they're working and collaborating on a regular basis with parents to meet the needs that are listed for those students. Instructionally, Sandra spoke to that, and I'll just add that our special ed teachers are doing a great job connecting with our students, whether it's through Google Classroom or a variety of different professional learning communities. They've connected with parents, and certainly they continue to offer their services and provide services that are listed on the IEP to students as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
I do have a question if I can.
Go for it.
Could you give us an idea of how many students have been declassified during this time? Period?
Since the COVID started.
Since COVID, Reverend?
Yes, that's the time period I'm referring to.
Oh, sure. So from our last meeting to now, one. Oh. One.
The answer is one.
Since the COVID?
Since our last,
Okay.
since 3/18 in the last.
Right. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Where are we?
Report. Nancy Rad, I'm sorry. We've got Nancy here. One more.
Hello, everybody. I'm here. Yep. So my focus lately has been on food service for our families in need and our weekend backpack program. On March 27th, we served 2,000 students out of 3,700 food lunches. That was our highest day. Yesterday was our lowest day where we only served about 500 people. It's hit or miss. We can't figure out what brings them out. Yesterday was a beautiful day. Last Thursday on the April 9th, we served 1,800 students. So we just, like, you just don't know. It was pouring rain on Thursday. People came out in droves. So we're doing our best, and we're getting out into the community and having lots of sites for people to stop and pick up things. We also are doing on the weekend, the LPP program had been doing about 70 students throughout the year, throughout the district, every Friday, sending bags of food home with certain kids. We have expanded on that, and we now have about 140 families that we are giving food to on the weekend, and all of that food is donated to us through our amazing ATA members, through community members. We have had donations from Rotary, from Zonta, from Children's Aid, from the Fulton Action Committee, Head Start, and then private citizens have given us a huge amount of money to help fund all that. So we're very thankful we have those in our community, those wonderful, amazing people. We've had the Department of Public Works help us deliver some of the backpacks. We've had, we had donation from Beech Nut. We've had, just anybody and everyone who wants that's out there has asked if they can help in some way. So we're very, very thankful for that. And we have also the childcare taking place. And we started out with about 20 people who responded to our survey, but it keeps growing because essential workers are in need of childcare, and more of them are being called back to work. So currently we have about, I'd say 27. I think today I had another one added. So it was 26. And now I think we're up to 27 children who are in childcare around the region and around Amsterdam and in Johnstown that are part of our community. So it's just, we just take it day by day. Every day is a little different, and we're out there helping in any capacity that we can. And that's all I have for you today.
Thank you, Nancy, for everything you're doing and everybody who's helping you.
Well, thank you to all of them. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, Dr. Colucciello, did you have anything to add?
Good, thank you.
All right. So discussion of well, let's see the committee, audit committee, anything? Curtis
said, shaking his.
No, thank you, Dr. Bush.
All right, board policies. I know that we have some that we have to review, but the committee did not meet. There is no visitation, so there's no point in even going there. So now discussion of resolutions. Is there anyone who has any questions about any of the resolutions? No? Okay.
So is the administration, they are put, all of these people that are in for tenure, they have reviewed everything, and they all, I mean, they're on the list, and so they agree with everything, correct?
Right, we've reviewed each of them with the administrators, and all of the ones that you are being brought forth are being recommended by the building principal and by the superintendent to the Board of Education.
Dr. Bush?
Yes?
You went through the visitation quick, but I did visit Tackler during one of the mail distributions that participated in that. And I wanted to give kudos not only to the volunteers that's passing out the mails and all, but the custodial staff that has been excellent and right in cleaning up before we get there, after we get there, as the mails are passed out on the appointed days.
Okay, so actually you were there helping to pass out the lunches and the food?
Yes.
Okay, that was very nice of you. Thank you. Anybody else?
So what is the 4-year BOCES agreement with the Saratoga, Schenectady, Schoharie, Albany Board of Education, the BOCES?
So that's for a lease purchase agreement for another purchase of 160 Chromebooks.
Great, thank you. How, do we know how many that's gonna set, how many we'll have in the district then?
So we, at this point right now, we pretty much have one Chromebook per student. So I know Eric Scholl's somewhere behind the scenes there. I believe it's about, at this point, right now, 3,700 Chromebooks.
I think we're close to
Yeah.
4,000, Mr. Benedict. We will get that number.
That's wonderful. That is wonderful.
What resolution was that? Curtis, what
It's the
resolution?
first one, Nellie. It's on the first page there of the resolutions. Finance Department oh, no. Sorry about that. It's gonna be, number 13, item 13 on page 6.
Okay, I
And
have a
then-
question about that. Okay.
Okay, and then, so what is this, number 484, the tenure area corrections? What does that mean exactly? Because I noticed you got, Sharon Trova on there. What does that mean exactly?
I can explain that. So if you look back here, all the way back from 2003, we noticed that the tenure recommendations were incorrect. So all the way back in 2003, they were tenuring teachers based on their certification rather than subject. So for example,
Okay, I'm sorry, repeat that. What are you saying?
so they were tenuring teachers based on their certification area versus their subject area. For example, instead of saying science 7 through 12, they would say tenure area in chemistry or tenure area in biology or tenure area in physics. That's wrong. It should be tenure area in 7 through 12 science. Same thing with foreign language. They tenure them in Spanish versus just foreign language. So that all needed to be fixed.
So the district was tenuring people in areas that you are not able to tenure them
Right,
in.
in certification areas.
When you're hired as a teacher, Spanish teacher, you're a foreign language teacher.
You're not a Spanish.
You're not a Spanish
Tenured
teacher.
in Spanish or
There's no
tenured-
tenure in Spanish. There's tenure in foreign language. There's no
Okay,
tenure.
but isn't there a state ed rule that states that a teacher cannot, like, we'll use Ms. Trova, we brought this up before during one of our meetings. She has her degree, I think, in chemistry and her credential in chemistry, and she's teaching, I think you mentioned she's teaching physics now. So how are we allowing them to cross-teach like that?
So you could not be tenured in physics. You could be tenured in science.
Okay.
So this district decided, we're going to decide on tenure area. The state decides tenure area. So we were.
Okay, so how does that work, Dr. Colucciello? How does that work for them if they've got their credential in, say, biology or chemistry? Are you now stating that they could, all of our teachers could cross-teach in areas that they're not certified in?
No. No, go ahead, Sarah.
So I think Nellie might know more than I do, and I don't know, Nellie, it's something that Bill Down question also. I think they can teach in one area out of their subject area, or
Yeah, they can teach one outside.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But then
So a history teacher could teach one class of English, even though they're only certified in history, social studies.
Okay.
So you can
Only
teach one outside.
One
All
outside.
right.
That's the tenure area.
Well, thank you for catching this. I'm sure those teachers will, especially Ms. Foote, since 2003, she'll probably appreciate that you're making the correction.
in Arizona Complexity, we have 3,547 Chromebooks.
3,547 Chromebooks, and that's, by the way, the enrollment here.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
So
Thank
every
you.
child will have one. Every child will have a Chromebook, right? All right. Anybody else with the resolutions? Good. Okay, let's move on. We're going to take away resolution 461. That's on the calendar. We didn't get a copy of the calendar, so we'll have to do that the next meeting. That's resolution 461. And we've already done resolution 485. That was the building project. So Bill, go ahead.
454 through 460, 462 through 484.
Do I have a sponsor?
Sure.
Gavin. See, Lori, I'm getting used to doing this without.
Wait.
you.
I see that.
Hold on.
You beat me to
Sorry.
it.
Sorry. Hold on one second. Can we break out the 457, please? 457. Now, I may be the only person in the room, but I got a treasurer's report that was not for March. I got a treasurer's report for January. So are we voting? Nowhere. Okay, yeah, it does. It says the month of January. Okay, thank you.
Just a quick comment on that. January is getting kind of back.
Yeah. It's getting behind. This is.
I agree with you 100%. We are working on that too, really, really, really hard. As you know, there's some health issues going on. And obviously with the COVID, that's not helping the situation, but I have everybody on board trying to get these done.
Were you able to hire that person you needed in your office? That clerk that you were looking for? What happened with that?
Not yet. And right now we're on a hiring freeze for right now.
Oh my gosh, you should be able to waiver something like that.
We're gonna look.
If I was to tell you how many waivers that we've been having the last few weeks, it's crazy.
Kevin, Curtis, are you done?
Nobody wants it more than me.
All right, let's go with the vote, Lori.
Thank you.
Okay,
So 554 through 556, 457 to be voted separately, 458 through 460, 461 off, 462 through 484.
Good.
Okay, and Gavin was the sponsor for the group resolution.
Yes.
So, Mr. Battisti.
Yes.
Ms. Buttata.
Yes.
Mrs. Mancini.
Yes.
Reverend McCurd.
Yes.
Mr. Murdoch.
Yes.
Mr. Penninger.
Yes.
Mr. Penninger. Yeah. Dr. Bush.
Yes.
And could I have a sponsor for resolution 457?
I'll do it.
Who said that, Nellie?
Nellie.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And Mr. Battisti?
Yes.
Ms. Buttata?
Yes.
Mrs. Mancini?
Yes.
Reverend McCurd?
Yes.
Mr. Murdoch?
Yes.
Mr. Penninger?
No.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Okay, that's it.
Did you get my vote? Could you hear me say no?
No, could you repeat that?
Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. We'll
Thank you. Good job for your first time.
Thank
I really didn't like this. The voice
Night.
was not good. Voice was not good.
Not do it again.
Thank you.
Say good night, Ray.
You look good, Ray. You look like
Buenas
you're gonna rob a bank.
Say good night.
Good night.
Ray,
Good night.
can you get me one of those? Can you get one of those for me?
I actually will.
All right, thank you, my friend.
Got a breathing apparatus.
Get out of that.
Get you one.
Terrible, terrible voice. Terrible, terrible.
Nellie, your microphone is still on.
I know, I'm trying to get out of here. The only way to do it is to
Just leave you in
eliminate the
case you
email.
say something else a little bit terrible.
Oh,
What time did it start? Because I came in obviously late.
about 6:30, Reverend.
About 6:30.
Yeah, we had a little trouble.
Yeah. Well, I thought you'd be further ahead by the time I got here. Wow. I could tell by Nellie's response it was not that good.
It's been a long night. She doesn't really care for this.
Yeah.
I don't think,
She uses this at Fonda Fultonville. She's just not happy with the quality that ours has. She uses the same exact thing on a daily basis, but this one she was not happy with.
You know what? We had an awful lot of people on.
Yeah.
There were over 32 people on. I think that affects the quality.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Good night.
good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Blessings. Stay safe.
Oh.
Nellie, are you trying to figure out how to leave the meeting?
Oh my God. So typical.